You are listening to episode 197 of Mitolife Radio. I am Matt Blackburn, your host, and today I'm interviewing Luke Storey. Luke is a writer, meditation and metaphysics teacher, and a lifestyle designer / biohacker who shares his journey of health, addiction recovery, and spirituality. In 2016, he launched the Lifestylist podcast, and that was one of the inspirations to start my show. I loved the guests that he had on, and him along with Justin over at Extreme Health Radio were big inspirations for me to even start this podcast. If not for them, I wouldn't have started this show. And if you've been following my journey for a while, you could tell that I really like to ask questions, and I like it even more than getting answers because it's much more interesting. And I share that passion with Luke Storey, just being a student at heart and always being open to new information and experimenting and finding what works and sharing that with others. That's what we are passionate about. I think the concept of biohacking has been really bastardized over the years. And when people think of biohacking now, they think of really expensive devices, really complicated protocols, and some might even associate biohacking with the concept of dieting, which is like a luxury and that's only available in first world countries. And there is that aspect to it that money is required. And I often think about water filtration. Is using a water filter unit under your kitchen sink a biohack? I would consider it one, because by removing contaminants from the water and maybe remineralizing it with ideally magnesium bicarbonate, you are changing your physiology with technology, which is one of the definitions of biohacking. In this interview, I like that Luke emphasizes free biohacks. He shares his morning routine, and none of it involves a device. But when you do get into devices and supplements, they are tools. They're not something to create your identity around. They are simply tools to improve your quality of life. And everybody has the choice to decide how simple or how complicated they want their toolbox to be. Personally, it's very fun for me to make the most complicated, elaborate toolbox I can possibly imagine. And it doesn't stress me out. It's fun. It's what I live for. And I think Luke is the same. But for other people, they want the least complicated, minimalist. And that's completely fine. There's nothing wrong with that philosophically. It's just different ways of living life. The jobs that I worked back in California, looking at the customers, looking at my coworkers, looking at the students I went to college with, seeing what people were eating, drinking, listening to, just constantly flooding the body with information and substances that perpetually subdue one's potential. That was a big inspiration for me to go the other direction. And of course, there's a balance. It's not about being perfect. It's not about being a superhero, being more than what we are, which is imperfect human beings. It's just about living a better life. And I think a lot of people are unaware of the amount of support that we have available. It's mind-blowing. Relatives and friends that pass away from some disease, and the remedy has been here all along, and here's 1,000 more remedies that fix the same problem. Or there's just the optimization piece, which is what Luke and I are into, which is just having a ton of energy and mental clarity and peace of mind, because those are all things that allow us to connect better to our loved ones, our family, our friends, and just live a more full life. So in this episode, Luke and I talk about a lot of things: supplementation, liposomal supplements, intravenous nutrients, his experience with nicotine, past 36 years, cigars, new calm, EMFs, excipients and supplements, diet wars, nanotech and graphene oxide, melatonin, suppositories, grounding, EMF shielding clothing, balanced use of social media, the Carol bike, methylene blue with red light IVs, NAD, magnesium, dental biohacks, how to recover from depression, what's his stance on iron overload, what biohack was he into that he's not into anymore, and a ton more. So enjoy the show. Here is Luke's story. All right, we are here with Luke's story. Welcome to the show.
Oh man, it's good to see you. This is fun because I listen to your podcast, I would say pretty much every week. I think I don't know if I've missed any of them because I've backtracked and listened to some. So it's going to be funny. I probably won't listen to this one in its entirety because I don't want to hear myself talk for that long. But yeah, it's cool. I love your show. So it's really fun to be on.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, you were one of my biggest inspirations to start this podcast, along with Justin of Extreme Health Radio. And I think you guys have awesome shows. And yeah, it's going to be an awesome conversation. I think we've been talking for like 6 years now, something like that. 5, 6 years.
That's probably, because it was around the time I started my podcast. I think the first time we met was at your place in Big Bear. And you had all these like pyramids and shit with your algae oil under it. I think you had the amp coil and like, a lot of the Nano V or something like that. Like a lot of the technologies I use, and we were into so much of the same stuff. I think the only thing that we weren't at that time, I'm sure there's more things now that we don't necessarily agree on, but at that time it was spring water. I was like, dude, you have an amazing spring right on the highway outside of Big Bear. And you're like, yeah, maybe I'll check it out sometime, I don't want the acid rain in my water or whatever, But yeah, we were kindred spirits. And for people listening that saw this phase, I think it's funny and it would be weird to ignore. But then there was a phase where you and I didn't talk, and we were kind of, I would say like you were more trolling me, but I blocked you because you were like talking about what I perceived to be all the things that I believed in and loved. And you were like, fuck all this stuff. So I was like, one day hastily, I admit, and my apologies. We've of course talked about this since. I was like, I don't want to look at this. This guy's like hates everything I do. So I blocked, and then like you started trolling me, and then all these people started sending me like clips of it, and they're like, what's going on with you and this guy? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I'm just living my life, man. And then, ultimately I think one day I was sitting there, I was like, this is so stupid. Like Matt and I were friends. Because this doesn't really happen in my life, but I think things get misconstrued on social media when you're not actually hanging out with someone in person. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of rare for me. But then I was like, I just got to call this guy because this is dumb. We're supposed to be allies. We both have the same mission, right? Which is to help people become healthier and happier. And we might have some different ways of going about doing that. But essentially like 99.9% of the shit that we both do is the same, So I'm glad that we've come full circle and, are talking and, sending funny texts to each other and stuff.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you brought that up. And yeah, I think it's, I've matured quite a bit over the years, and it's unfortunate that we have adults, like we were at the same conference where somebody that won't be named crashed the conference, and I was speaking, and it was just very uncomfortable, and they were very disrespectful because they thought I was still selling algae oil, and I was currently in a lawsuit because I couldn't talk about it. And it was just a big, I
remember that.
It's a big misunderstanding and just a lot of weirdness. But I think the older you get, or the more experience and wisdom and maturity, you just are less interested in that stuff, and the drama you just kind of ignore. And I think you did the right thing to block, because that's what I do now, and just move on and focus on things that matter. Like you said, face-to-face interactions, because online you don't know someone if you've never met them in person.
I mean, even just when you send someone a text, there's so many, there's an infinite number of ways in which one could interpret the intention, the emotion, the intent right behind something. And I think that's true even with social media. Like one could post a story about something or someone on Instagram and not necessarily mean it to be degrading to that person, but just asking a question or disagreeing with something, but you can't read like the body language and the nuance behind it. And I think that's where a lot of these online battles start. Like for me, if I could go back and do that over again, I could have just called you or text you. Because what I perceived at that time, that's just fun. We'll just go into this. I literally thought you were like inadvertently like shitting on me because the things you were talking about were so spot on to like everything that I promote and talk about. Like at that time, I was beginning to get into plant medicines and, spring water and Kundalini yoga and all these different things. And then I'd see you post like, yeah, these asshole influencers that are into psychedelic spring water and Kundalini yoga. So I'm like, he's got to be talking about me because it's so specific, but I could have just called you. I think at that particular time, I was having kind of knee-jerk reactions of just like, wow, this feels good just to block anyone that is not in my vibe,
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, it was a funny experience. I'm glad we turned the corner on it.
Me too. Yeah. I mean, I'm still not in favor of liposomal supplements. Like I was actually thinking about it this morning. I'm like, capsules and pills get so much hate lately. Just kind of transitioning, but kind of in the same vein.
Yeah.
As far as supplements, because I've opened up the last 2 or 3 months to, no supplement is toxic, which is so counter to 90% of the information out there on social media and what people are saying. Because there's these trending things like iron is toxic, vitamin D is toxic, ascorbic acid is toxic, and it's so sensationalist that people gravitate towards it because it's interesting. But I've kind of taken a step back from all that and said, hey, maybe everything's a tool, including psychedelics. I'm not in a place in my life where I feel called to do them. But I think for some people, they can be beneficial, but everything is so contextual, right? I mean, especially with supplements, as a supplement owner, I'm starting to realize that it's like everything has its time and place in a different phase in someone's life and what they're going through. And
oh my God, totally. And it's so bio-individual. I mean, even if you're supplementing in a very targeted way based on labs, your labs could change on a daily or weekly basis. You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's a snapshot of like, this is what's happening today, 12 hours fasted or whatever, but you could get totally different values within a number of days. And so, yeah, I do my best to not be fixed about that. The one thing that I have, around the liposomal thing that's interesting is I've been someone who just pounds tons of capsules and tablets and whatever supplements I think I need, right? And I don't know that I've been in tune with my body to the point where I'm able to sense if it really wants it or need it. Like some people use muscle testing or they have someone, do kinesiology on them to determine which supplements they should be taking when. I've never really gotten that tuned in. But I've learned from some of the people that I've interviewed that when you taste the constituents of any food, herb, natural medicine supplement, and it's open in your mouth, that there's a biosignaling mechanism that takes place that gets your digestive system ready for whatever that thing is, right? Whether it's a piece of lettuce or beef liver or whatever. So I've begun to kind of wonder if it's maybe not that awesome to just bomb your stomach with like 10 pills and your body has no idea what's in it until it breaks open, because you're not getting that precursory data from your in your mouth and the saliva and all the enzymes that activate and all that. Taking that a step further, I mean, imagine how, if that's maybe not the best, then liposomal would really be fucked up, because you're just bypassing the digestive system altogether, right? You're just getting these tiny molecules inside the cell. So, who knows what's right? I guess it's a N equals 1. How do I feel? Do I feel better? Do I feel worse over time? But with the supplements, something I've been looking at is, and someone asked me this because I'm in a process right now of quitting nicotine after like 36 years of being addicted to nicotine, and it's really fucking hard. And so I think it was my wife was like, well, have you ever thought about like just taking some time and not taking any supplements or not doing any biohacks and just being like normal and just living. And I go, if I'm really honest, I don't think I could do it. I don't think I could. Like, I'm just, my whole life, literally, I started taking supplements when I was probably 5 or 6 years old that my mom would give me. My whole life, I've been kind of controlling and adjusting how I feel throughout the day, whether it was with supplements or the long period I spent in active drug addiction and alcoholism. I'm just kind of wired to constantly be tweaking and fine tuning my mood and the way I feel. So I don't know if I could ever actually, I mean, you can do anything you want, right? But I don't know if I would have enough inspiration to be willing to see what it would be like to like go a month with no supplements and just eat like steak and potatoes every day and just live my life. I don't know if I could do it. What would happen if I did? You know, maybe I would feel great. Who knows?
I don't think I could either. I mean, I think I've taken days off of supplements, and if I take like days off Shilajit like consecutively, I feel different. I mean, there's some things like that. Kind of going back for a second, did you see the Liver King Dave Asprey challenge where I think Dave Asprey posted he was taking 50 capsules at once or something?
No.
All in one. Yeah, it was hilarious. So I think it started with the Liver King, and he was like, you know, I challenge so-and-so to swallow, 50 capsules of desiccated liver, and he did it all in one gulp. And then Dave Asprey did one that was like 60 or something like that.
Oh, that's funny. Is the Liver King the guy who's like really buff and kind of has like a caveman vibe?
Yeah.
I think I saw a video of him a couple days ago where he like rode a horse into Costco or something. Is that the guy?
Yeah.
It was like, I don't know what he was doing. I hear the name a lot. Like he's kind of I don't know, influential figure. I hear the name, but I didn't really know who he was or what he did,
Yeah, definitely entertaining to watch for sure.
Yeah, it's like that subsect of like cow testicle butthole sunning, this whole subculture kind of thing. And hey, man, more power to you. Whatever. I mean, that's the thing. You look at that kind of trend, right? And it's like one could spend a lot of time like negging on that, and if it makes people happy and makes them feel good, more power to them. I mean, the only time that I would maybe take issue with that is if somebody was like the CDC, right? Like recommending things to people that will actually kill you, So it's like a health influencer, like, oh, I like magnesium. Why don't I like calcium? It's like, whatever, man, like do whatever makes you feel good, Yeah.
So 36 years quitting nicotine. I wanted to talk about that because I'm sure you see me with my cigar enjoyment.
I'm so jealous. Yeah, I'll be honest. I'm jealous. I saw you posted your humidor and I was like, oh man. Yeah, it's funny, Matt. I think some of us, for some reason, just seem to be born with a propensity for addiction and just a lack of ability to control the use of anything that has addictive potential. And I started, I don't know, like stealing my parents' cigarettes probably when I was 9 or 10, 11, something like that. And just hated it and got really sick, like all kids that try cigarettes. I remember at one point my dad used to dip Skull, and I don't know if I ever stole it from him. Maybe I must have not, because I didn't learn this lesson, but I kept bugging him to give me some. And then one day he's like, oh, you want to be a man? You want to have the dip? And I was like, yeah, Dad. And he gave me a big old dip and didn't tell me not to swallow. And so I swallowed all the dip and got really sick. So, earlier in life, there wasn't a lot of affinity toward the tobacco or the nicotine. But then when I was about 15, I was in boarding school, actually in northern Idaho. And I started smoking when I was 15. So that would have been 1985. And smoked until I cigarettes, a pack a day at least, until I was probably in my late 30s. Then I quit for a couple years. And then I was on a trip in the Bahamas and someone gave me a Cuban cigar, like a nice Cohiba. And I was like, that little angel on my shoulder was like, Luke, don't do it. You've been off cigarettes. You're doing good. This could trigger you. And I thought, I'm not gonna, and then the little devil was like, you're not going to start smoking cigars. Like old men that play golf smoke cigars, like dudes that play cards, like that's not going to be your thing. So I smoked it. Immediately the next day I'm at the cigar shop buying boxes of Cuban cigars. And then that went on for like 5 years. I'm ordering from Cubans from like the Canary Islands and Spain and Hong Kong and like getting all these, I mean, not bootleg, but just essentially smuggling in Cubans. And I would smoke them all day, every day. Like there was not, I could never get it to be where, oh, it's Saturday night, I'm going to relax and like really enjoy a cigar. It was like wake up in the morning, go out in the backyard, smoke half a cigar, want to throw up, and then start my day, you know? So I went through that phase, then, and then quit that because it was, you know, I'm spending like $10 to $35 per stick, and I'm smoking, that's what we cigar smokers call them, sticks. I'm smoking like 4 full-size cigars per day. I mean, it's a lot of money every month, just thousands of dollars on my credit card that I didn't have. Eventually I quit that and then made it for a while. Then I got on the Swedish snus, the little pouches, got addicted to those, quit those. I mean, it's just like this merry-go-round, right? Together with my wife, Allison, and then oh, I know. I had been off everything for a while, and I went to Costa Rica to participate in some ayahuasca ceremonies, and they smoke this sacred tobacco during the ceremony. In the Peruvian Shipibo tradition, they're called mapachos, and they're these kind of hand-rolled, almost like a spliff, like a big, thick cigarette. You don't inhale them; you just kind of breathe it into the room, and it cleanses the energy field, and it's beautiful. And so they passed those out at the beginning of ceremony. By the second day, the next morning, I'm going around and taking the half smoked ones out of everyone's ashtrays. I'm not even kidding. It's like, that's how ridiculous it is. So anyway, man, we could do a 2-hour podcast about how fucked up my life with nicotine is. And yeah, a couple of weeks ago, now I've just been on the gum and the pouches, but it's just all day, every day. Quit those and then got on the Zen spray by Mitozen, which is like a extract of hape, a really strong Amazonian tobacco blend. And those aren't meant to be used all the time. That's like, you know, again, once a week, you're going to have some breath work or meditate. You take a couple blasts of this nasal spray, which also has oxytocin and some essential oils and stuff. And it can be really nice. But I got off the gum and then found one of those in my drawer. And then I was on that all day, every day. And it's just brutal on your sinuses and your ears ring. It's just not something to be used all the time. So anyway, 2 weeks ago, I quit and it's been really hard. Like I'm like biting my nails like crazy. I'm really antsy. So when I see you smoking your cigars, yeah, I'm like, God damn it. I wish I could just moderate and ration that, because it's specifically with cigars, because they can just be so beautiful. It's such a great ritual. It's so meditative. I think that in moderation, that, you know, great high quality tobacco is really good for you. And yeah, it's just, I finally had to accept at 52 years old, just like, Luke, in this lifetime, I don't think you're going to be able to control this molecule. It just gets me. It's so addictive for me. So anyway, that's the story. Word to the wise, warning to the you know, the ex-addicts and alcoholics out there that think you can like play with nicotine. It's a tricky one.
Wow. Yeah, have you ever tried subliminal messages? Because I just put on my website like a month ago, like a real subliminal, and I use that to change my money beliefs. When I was living with my parents, like demoing Harmless Harvest coconut water at Costco, I was like beaming like money beliefs, I think for 6 months straight, every night religiously through the neurophone into my forehead.
Yeah.
And it really worked. Like I started making more money within a year of doing that. So
totally.
I'm like a super believer in subliminal. I am
too.
Yeah.
I've not done it that way, but when I was in about a week into this last quit time period, I did hire a hypnotherapist and we did a remote session and it was recorded. And then I was supposed to keep listening to it and I just keep forgetting to listen to it. It would probably really help, you know, because it was all these reinforcing affirmations and things like that, right? Of just, you don't need this thing to be happy. You're awesome. You know, you have dominion over this thing. And, you know, it was like really great messaging that was actually taken from my voice, the way that this person, and I guess most of them do the hypnotherapy, is you kind of talk and they're taking notes on the way that you phrase things that are natural and innate to the way you communicate, right? And then they read those back during the hypnosis session. So it's pretty cool.
That's what you could do with this company. I don't know if it's the only one, but you could send in your like script and then they could make it even silent.
Oh,
So you can
cool.
play it like on a Bluetooth speaker when you're walking around.
Yeah, that's rad. Yeah, the neurophone. You reminded me of the neurophone. That's the Flanagan thing, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, I had one of those years ago. I don't know what I did with it. I don't think I have it anymore. It's like, you know how it is with these technologies, just so much new stuff comes out. It's like, it's hard to keep track of like what's useful and what's not. You go through phases of being really excited about something. Like I just got this in-ear laser, which is called, what's it called? Lux Spa by Dr. Wilden. And it's a class 1M laser. And so you put these lasers in your ear. I think it's like 660 nanometers, red laser light. And it's supposed to really help with tinnitus. And so, I got that thing. So now if I have 20 minutes every day, like I'm using that thing, and then the other things I forget about because, they don't help tinnitus. And that's what I'm trying to fix,
That's a big issue that I've looked into it, and it seems like there's not like a cure. I hear like magnesium, but everyone says kind of different things. I laughed. I think I was listening to one of your shows and you were saying you had like a desk drawer of just your throwaway devices just don't used for a while.
I have a lot. There's that cabinet right back there. I mean, they are well organized, and I have all the chargers organized in the garage, so they're all there. But you forget about the things that don't really, I don't know, that don't really have a discernible impact. There's a really cool thing I just got called the Neurovisor. It's this thing right here. If you ever put this out on video, it's kind of like the Lucia light, but it's portable. So you put this thing on your head, and then it has the little light panel that flips down. And then there's an app with like a bunch of different music tracks that are kind of binaural beats, sort of like New Calm, but with music tracks over it. And then those correspond to the light show in your eyes. So it's like a hypnagogic light thing, but rather than being $8,500 to $24,000 like the Lucia light and not be portable, this thing, I think it's like $1,500. But it really is like a really deep meditative kind of psychedelic experience, and each track is only 11 minutes.
Wow.
So I've been using that a lot, but like with all these things, there's always something I would change. It's Bluetooth, and so you can't turn it on airplane mode. Like the Happy or the Apollo, there's the Oura Ring. There's different things you can use where you activate it with the app, and then you can flip it to, airplane, so you're not getting zapped with Bluetooth. But with this, I just figured, well, it's the cost to benefit ratio. I'm probably getting more benefit in that 11 minutes just to my overall life quality than I am the detriment of having Bluetooth, 3 inches from my forehead for that 11 minutes. Because I mean, if you have your cell phone like anywhere within a couple feet from your head, and it's on LTE or 5G or 4G or whatever, I mean, you're getting a much stronger pulse of radiation to the brain than putting Bluetooth a few inches from your head for 11 minutes. So, you got to pick your battles, but sometimes I wish more companies that are in the tech development space were aware of things, like all these devices have blue light on them, right? And you say you can't use them at night. I have this rad hydrogen machine next to me. And I mean, I don't really sit here much after dark, but it's got like a ton of blue light coming off it. And it's the best hydrogen machine I found. It makes water, and you could do inhalation, but they don't have an option to like turn it red. So I have to get red stickers and like cover up all the blue lights. It's just like I'm always in a battle with the technology to make them more biocompatible and have as few deficits as possible so I can use them and just derive the benefits.
Yeah. A couple paths I wanted to go down with stuff that you said. You got me into New Calm, and I'm really glad you did, because I tried like Brain FM and other things, and nothing compared. Like my friends were like, "Oh, try this one. It's free. And there's no subscription." And it just sucked. I think you said the same thing. And so like, I've been doing like an amino acid therapy experiment based on a podcast I did with Sean Bean, and he got me into taurine because based on my genetic stuff and, B12 stuff, probably had low taurine. So I started just slamming taurine, not slamming it, but like 2-3 grams here and there. And it kept me up. And I guess that's a thing if you supplement taurine before bed.
Oh,
so,
wow.
So a couple nights ago, I got like 4 hours of sleep. And so, so I'm like, okay, I have a lot of stuff to do. I just did I think I did a float in my float tank. And then I did the new calm. So I did new calm like back to back in the float tank and then like on the couch. And I felt great after I did both of those. I felt like I got a full night's sleep. And I was like, thank you, Luke, for getting me on this.
New calm is the best, dude. I try to explain it to people. It's like you can't overemphasize how well it works and how reliably it works to just calm you down and knock you into theta. It's the best restorative recovery thing that I've ever tried. And I always say that definitively. I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff out there, but New Calm's awesome. And then I don't know if you've tried it. They have these focus tracks now in the app update, because I was using Brain FM too, and I like it. Like I find my focus is better if I have headphones on with Brain FM. But dude, if I put the New Calm on, I mean, I'm a machine. I actually rarely ever try to work without it. The only thing is like you can run Brain FM from your desktop or your laptop. With the New Calm, you got to have your phone nearby, and then you can't really use your phone while you're, that's the only thing. I wish there was a desktop version of the New Calm track so you could like just put your phone away and just focus on the computer work. But yeah, New Calm is freaking insane. It's so cool.
I'll have to try that focus while I'm on the computer, because I have a pretty crazy setup. I have like the blue light from Chroma. It's like pretty bright.
Oh, cool. Wow.
And then I have like the resonant light, which I usually do the adrenal balance one or adrenal calming, just run that while I'm in here. And then Nano V's. I try to combine as much as I can practically. But I wanted to jump into EMF since we only have so much time. I might have to have you back. I'm thinking about it, but with electromagnetic fields, because you were talking about blue light and stuff. Have you ever listened to Doris Lowe or read any of her stuff on like ascorbic acid and 5G and EMFs?
No, I haven't.
It's amazing. It's kind of like Jack Kruse level detail, talking about like quantum, tunneling and all this stuff. But I'm convinced that ascorbic acid and magnesium supplementation is pretty foundational to protecting our cells from the harmful effects of EMF radiation. She has really compelling arguments. Basically, that ascorbic acid isn't just an antioxidant or a pro-oxidant in high doses; it's a redox balancer. So that's like her main thesis, and she proves that. And since EMFs throw off her redox, ascorbic acid helps to keep it.
That's a good idea. I never thought about that. I've definitely been hip to the keeping the magnesium levels high because of the calcium influx thing. And then hydrogen, I do a lot of hydrogen because the free radical scavenger element of that. But yeah, vitamin C, it's funny. I take whole food vitamin C, I'd say most days, but I don't typically take like ascorbic acid. Not that I have anything against it per se. I just always thought, well, I'm probably getting enough of the actual vitamin C if I'm doing like your resiliency product or another whole food. Like Paleo Valley sent me a whole shitload of their whole food C thing. And I like that, but that makes sense actually to kind of up the dose for the EMF.
Yeah. I don't want to make this a sales pitch, but my next product coming out.
Wow, your products are great, man. Please tell me about it.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, next week, it should be a couple days after this podcast, 3 or 4 days after, is an ascorbic acid one. But what's unique is it's, so the one I've been taking has ascorbyl palmitate and the other ingredients, which is, the fat soluble type of vitamin C instead of water soluble. And I don't know if that's safe or good. So I came out with my own, which is basically going to be ascorbic acid, bioflavonoid complex, and then bamboo silica, and that's it. And then just the capsule.
Cool.
So it's like super clean. There's no magnesium stearate, there's no silica. And it's like half whole food vitamin C, so it's almost there. I
like it. So are you going to replace your resiliency product with that?
I might have two. Yeah, I might make the resiliency like a powdered form. I'm looking at it coming out with some pouch products that you could like dump in smoothies and stuff.
Awesome, man. Yeah. It's so rad, dude. I'm so happy for you. I remember when you first started, you just had the one algae oil product that everyone knows, I'm sure, that why you abandoned that particular product, but it's been cool to see you scale and grow. And I like that you're, like anyone, well, not anyone, I mean, anyone that has the wherewithal to start a supplement company, you could just have like every freaking supplement on the market because you know what sells, right? But it's like your collection of sorts is very targeted. That's why I like it. It's like a system within itself, right? There's kind of it's a closed system. That's the word I'm looking for. You know, where everything kind of has a purpose and has synergy with the other things that you make and sell. So yeah, it's been cool to see you do that. I've toyed with the idea myself, you know, just because there's things that I find to be really useful, and I just never come across anything that I think someone else isn't already doing better. You know what I mean? Like I don't know, like if I wanted Shilajit, oh, you have the Shilajit in the little tablet, super convenient, right? Because you can travel with them and you don't have to like break off the tar, and it's tested for metals and mold and all that shit. Because, you know, as you know, a lot of the Shilajit that you can get online is very suspect.
Right.
So, you know, I think, oh, it'd be great to have a Shilajit product, but then you already did it. It's like there's nothing that I find that's like not being done really well. And I've even had a couple of companies approach me that are like, one recently from China, and they're like, hey, we've got, you know, spermidine and urolithin A and some really cool things that are a bit more novel and outside of that. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. But there's still a couple brands out there that already have great products that have those in them. So what would make mine different? Like it has to be something different. Otherwise, I just can't see doing it. So I'm stoked for you found your niche and just like found the products that work and fit into your CLF protocol. And it's like makes a lot of sense, you know?
Appreciate that, man. Thank you. And what are your thoughts on like the excipients? Like, because that's the example I'm looking to set with Mitolife, and I'm switching. I only had a few products that had magnesium stearate and silica in them, but you know, I like you, I have bottles and bottles at my house. I have like a whole supplement store here, and probably 95% of them have magnesium stearate or silicon dioxide or silica in them, and it just seems like you can't escape them. But I think that's kind of like the future of supplements to me, as far as the capsules, is like moving more towards like bamboo silica and like cleaner.
Yeah.
Kind of.
I mean, you know, I remember, God, this is going back probably 15 years. I think it was Dr. Bob Marshall in Premier Research Labs. He was like the first brand that I found that made a really big deal out of the excipients, the magnesium stearate and all those things. And, you know, he predominantly featured the fact that all of their products were free of those excipients in their marketing materials. And it was like a big selling point. And I think those products are really good. I mean, I remember there was some quantum stuff they did to him or whatever. But if you opened up a bottle of any of his stuff, it smelled super strong. I mean, there was medicine in there, you know? So I don't know how much of that was like their manufacturing practices or the cosmic, you know, quantum juju they were putting into the process, or the fact that they lacked those excipients. But that kind of, I think, was the first time I became aware of that. But in the subsequent years, I've done a little research here and there, just kind of, you know, I get a product, I really like it, and it has that. So I Google, is magnesium stearate bad for you? And just as many people who are selling supplements saying the excipients are toxic, there's an equal number of people saying, oh no, look at all these studies that say they're harmless. So I don't know, but based on what I was saying earlier of just kind of being in tune with one's body and kind of asking your body what it wants and what it doesn't want, I would say the less fluff that you can put into a product, the better, even if it's not necessarily that harmful, at least not in small doses. Still, I mean, I would say cleaner is better, generally speaking, unless we just don't have definitive information. If you're taking a supplement once a month or once a week, but if you're like, you know, mega dosing something like your Dissolve It All, I'd take probably 10 of those every morning with a glass of water. And if that was full of magnesium stearate, like over time, there's probably a couple tablespoons every 3 months or something, you know? So it kind of depends on the frequency and all of that too. But I'm with you, like, as far as your supplements, I mean, I would recommend just making them as clean as humanly possible, just to eliminate any margin of error or misinformation that people might have about it, you know? And also that some people are super freaked out about it. So when they come to your site, they want to see like the list of things that are absent as much as they want to see the list of things that are actually within the ingredient deck.
Yeah. I was talking to a guest that I'm going to have on at the end of the month on hair tissue mineral analysis, and he's super into minerals and heavy metals and their relationship. And we're talking about like silica and aluminum, and I used to take like tons of living silica. I have a ton of bottles here
Yeah,
still.
me too. Yeah.
Push out the aluminum. And I'm wondering, does the silica in supplements do that to some degree, or is it toxic and it's like sand, like some people say? Or
Right.
I don't know. There's, like you said, there's a lot of fear stuff. And I think, yeah, the dose probably matters. Like I'm still going to take supplements that have those excipients in it. The main one I avoid is like titanium dioxide. I find that really messes up my stomach.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, I've not really I see that on some stuff and I've not really looked into it. Yeah, I'm in the same place. Like if something works, again, it's like the Bluetooth with the neurovisor. I think the cumulative benefit outweighs the detriment. So if I really needed vitamin E or K2 or whatever it is, and there's some magnesium stearate in there, like, am I not going to take that nutrient that my body actually really needs because I'm afraid of, a little bit of swag in the ingredients? Yeah. You got to choose your battles.
Right.
If it came between like the only product on the market, for example, K2 is a good one. There's no way I'm not taking K2 every day. And if there was only one brand in the world that had it and it had some excipients in it, I'm still going to take it because I want the K2. I can't eat that much natto. You know what I mean? My wife would leave me. She'd move out because of the smell,
Right. Yeah. I tried to get into like the fermented soy and it was rough. It was when I was in Big Bear, actually. I was trying to make it and stuff, and it was just really gross.
Yeah. It's funny. I actually kind of like natto. I kind of do. It took me a few years of just taking it as medicine before I was like, I kind of like it, but it helps if you put some, like sometimes I'll put mustard or barbecue sauce, just random condiments in it to change the flavor a little bit. And I find it helpful, but I think there is definitely something with the natto with that. Pardon me if anyone's eating right now, but that kind of gelatinous semen-like, bacterial web in it. There's something in that I think is really good for you. Like my body just goes, this is gross. Like the feel of it, the smell of it is gross, but like there's something to that, the density of the bacteria in there that I think it's got to be healing to the gut and whatever else, it does. It just feels like, damn, this is good for you, as disgusting as it is in many ways.
I think it contains spermidine, right? Soy.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It does. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. I had my soy phase. I grew up eating like blocks of tofu. So I was like mostly vegetarian. But
what size bra did you wear?
Never got the man boobs, but it definitely did a number on my iron, just not eating. So I just wasn't a fan of red meat. I don't know if it was like Little Bear cartoons or Disney movies that programmed me with like the talking animals, but yeah, I was just didn't really like eating a lot of animals growing up, I feel like. So
yeah, it's funny. I didn't really either. Why eat animals when there's pizza?
That was my thinking. Yeah.
It's like no steak is better than pizza. I would argue that that's probably true for me now. I just like the price that I pay for eating a pizza is just not worth it. But it's funny, like with the the diet wars. I know you talk about this a lot, of just these fad diets, and I think so much of it, and I'm totally guilty of this in the past, and I'm sure with my supplement obsessions, but there's so much orthorexia in that, and also so much just people wasting their time on the shit that doesn't actually matter that much. Like the nuances of like which diet's right for you. It's kind of like what we were talking about before of just the bio-individuality and the seasons that you go through as a person. There's times where I just like feel the best by literally just eating like meat and potatoes. That's probably like how I feel best. If I deviate and start trying to eat other foods that are supposedly really good for you, like a lot of vegetables, I don't feel that great. It's just weird. And I don't think there's like a right diet, the carnivore, the vegan, like I just want to tell everyone, like you're being distracted from the shit that really matters, man. Like, like the top 10 supplements, right? The K2, vitamin E, magnesium, like a lot of the stuff that you have. I mean, frankly, you get those, the fat soluble vitamins, the retinol, the cod liver oil, like you get all that in place, get a safe and like logical amount of sun, take a couple ice baths, do some saunas, like you watch, deal with the EMF, right? The blue light at night. There's probably like 20 things that you could do that are infinitely more meaningful than like the diet that you're on. To me, because I've just, after experimenting with this stuff for, God, 25 years now, the food is actually not really that important in how I feel, provided I'm not eating things that I know I'm just kind of allergic to, like gluten and seed oils and aspartame and MSG and like all that really nasty stuff, but just basically eating farmers market food, getting my raw milk, grass-fed butter, stomaching some, frozen liver chunks, just the basic stuff. As long as I'm just within some range of the diet, I feel the same kind of no matter what. Whether I'm like eating fewer carbs or more carbs, like all that, the repeat, like drinking Cokes to the fucking carnivore, no carbs at all, like all that stuff to me just gets crazy. It's like, just eat what you feel like eating, unless it's something that you have a bad reaction to, then maybe take a pause and look for the underlying issue that's causing you to have that reaction.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you remember Amin Ra? Like, I was doing his protocol for a while.
Oh, yeah.
So Marcus Rothkranz, like famous raw vegan, interviewed him, and that went viral. I think it had like millions of hits. And it's such an extreme 23-hour-a-day fasting protocol with a 1-hour eating window. And it was a soy and a bean diet. So, and with and he break the fast with a 12 amino acid protein shake with like spirulina and like brewer's yeast and other stuff.
Right.
And I got jacked. I was deadlifting and stuff, but I was so extreme about it. I'm like, this is the way to live forever. This is it. And I think to what you were saying, that's how people get with these diets. It's like, whenever you start something, even a new supplement, you're just like shouting from the rooftop. You're like so excited about it. Like, I was like that with lithium orotate a couple weeks ago, and I still am obsessed with lithium, but it's like people get that way with diets. It's like, they get so passionate about it because it's new to them. And whenever you're new to something, it's exciting and you want everyone to get on it and feel what you're feeling. But other people won't feel like you feel because they're different, like you're saying. So it's there's also that and I'm not saying this out of judgment, it's from experience because I've done it, but there's also this a very basic human need to have some sense of identity and significance, right? And that part of our persona that we call the ego wants to be able to be part of a tribe or to be labeled as a thing. I'm a this, I'm a that, whether it's people now that are so culturally, we're so obsessed with these micro identifications based on our sexual preference or the nuances of our race and genealogy and all of this stuff, right? Where it's like, or that I'm a vegan or I'm carnivore. It's like, no, I'm a soul or a spirit that somehow ended up in a human body that's here on earth to learn and evolve. I'm not a male. I'm not Caucasian. I'm not any of that. Those are just superficial representations or kind of masks that I wear. And so for me, I'm always trying to, however imperfectly I might do so, trying to get to the place where I can actually just operate in the world as that, right? As a soul having a human experience and actually shed any identifications of any type, let alone like what kind of fuel I put in my car. It's like if you're a Cadillac and you use unleaded, it's like calling yourself an unleaded. It's like the fuel you put in your body, but that's not the car. The car is the Cadillac, right? So the Cadillac is the soul that's having this experience. So identifying myself as the fuel that I put in my body and really creating an identity around that. And again, no judgment, it's just an observation. This is my perspective, having done this at different times in my journey. It's actually disempowering because it puts me further away from who and what I really am. And even if you were someone that's an atheist and you believe, no, I'm a piece of flesh that's inside this body, and when you die, and that's all there is, but you're still a human being. You're not a vegan, you're not paleo, you're not a thing, end quotes, right? You're still a human. So whatever your determination of a human is, but I think the more that all of us could disidentify from those micro identifications that are actually false and not really what we are and who we are, not only would we find probably easier access to universal truth and be less caught up in falsehoods, but we'd actually be able to relate to one another on a totally different level in terms of the unification of
the human species, you know, as a civilization, right? If I don't see you, Matt, as a white guy with a goatee that's carnivore, and I just see you, and when I look in your eyes, I just see a soul that's here with me, present, having an experience, then I feel that separation from you. The separation comes when the ego differentiates me as something special and unique, and all these micro identifications, classifies you as the other. And it's like one of the roots, if not the root of the situation we find ourselves in now with so much conflict in the world, you know? So I think the diet game is kind of the same way. And if you look at where a lot of this shit comes from, is from the companies selling you the food and supplements that make you be identified with that particular diet in a given time, you know?
That's really well said. Yeah.
It's kind of a trap. That's what
Right.
I'm saying. It's a distraction or a trap that is actually kind of misleading us away from who and what we really are.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. I think the last several years has been like a concerted effort to disconnect humanity, to separate us, right? And get families infighting over the jab and different things. And when I go out and buy grain for my goats or hay, or go to the health food store and have a frequent cashier and comes up in conversation, hey, what do you do for work, Matt? I always get kind of weird. I don't want to go too deep into it and just start rattling off all this stuff. And I try to just keep it very surface level and relatable, because I realize if I start going into detail and what makes my message unique and all this stuff, they really don't care. It really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, because it doesn't help me relate to them and communicate with them better, which is kind of the goal, right?
Yeah. I mean, though that brings to mind a whole other thing. I have a little dose of that.
What's that?
That's something called mambe.
Oh, nice.
It's a ground coca leaf with a little baking soda in it.
Oh, someone just asked me my thoughts on cocaine in my live yesterday. And I was like, well, I've never done it, but I'd probably coca leaf's better.
I would not recommend it. Yeah. This is just, it's kind of like kratom leaf, like a ground up
cool.
leaf. Yeah. And it's more mild than caffeine.
Wow.
But it's a little mood elevating. Actually, a mutual friend of ours that I won't mention here on the podcast, because technically it's illegal in the United States, which is ridiculous because it's not psychoactive in that, I mean, in a gross sense. And it's, you know, it's not cocaine. Cocaine is the shitty stuff they make out of this beautiful plant medicine called the coca plant. But a mutual friend of ours actually showed me where you could get it on the dark web. And so I started ordering it. Yeah.
We'll talk after the show.
Yeah, but it's helping me with the nicotine withdrawals. Like when I feel like I want to reach for something like I normally would a nicotine gum, I take a little spoonful of that mambe, and it's kind of like, kind of numbs my mouth and gives me, you know, a little bit of a lift. But it's not addictive because it's so unprocessed that there's not enough of the constituent that they make cocaine out of to make you addicted. Like cocaine is super addictive, you know.
That's really cool.
I know from personal experience.
Well, I think like tobacco, cannabis, coca is just another one of those plants that's been so demonized and perverted. And you've talked about that a lot. And yeah, I remember I was at a health conference once, and I ran into my friends, and he just pulled out his bag and gave me a little spoonful of coca leaf. He's like, put this in the corner of your mouth.
Yeah.
And I didn't get high or feel it. It was just colors got brighter and I got a little energy boost. And I was like, oh, this is nice.
Yeah.
No.
Well, it's interesting. I've not looked into it that much, but I do know that when Westerners go to Peru to go to the Andes, like to go to Machu Picchu, and I guess the native people there, not just Westerners actually, but part of the culture there is chewing the leaves or making a tea out of the coca leaf, and that helps you adapt to the altitude and the lower levels of oxygen, which is really interesting. So I don't know if it helps to oxygenate your brain or absorption of oxygen or what the deal is, but I mean, it's used mostly for that, as I understand, in Peru. Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. It's nice. It's cool. Yeah, definitely. When I first tried mambe, I was like, this is so nice. And it made me kind of just so embarrassed for humans that they took this plant and just ruined it so badly by making cocaine out of it, which is such a shitty drug in my experience. To each their own. I was like, God, this is beautiful. Like just this leaf is so nice. It's so full of these alkaloids. It's like, it's really medicinal. And you pour a bunch of gasoline and solvents on it to make cocaine out of it. smuggle it in a condom up someone's rear end and then sell it on the streets of wherever city, USA. It becomes a totally different thing.
Is it legal to grow in the US, do you know, or?
I think the plant itself is illegal.
Maybe I'll put that up in my geodesic dome when that finally gets up.
Oh man, that would be amazing. Be so cool. You know what's funny in that realm is I learned recently there's a cactus called the San Pedro cactus that they use also in Peru and different places to make a plant medicine that they call wachuma. And what's funny is to use San Pedro cactus as a supplement or a plant medicine or a sacrament is illegal in Texas, at least, but you can grow it, but you can't eat it. It's just so funny. You know, it's just this, I don't know, this Illuminati overlord kind of system. I find just, it's comical that there is a group of human beings that have assumed this false and undeserved level of authority that can tell native natural human beings like me and you and everyone else on the planet which plants we can or cannot put into our body. It's just so wrong, and we're so conditioned to it that we don't even notice or really fight back.
Right.
We're just kind of like, oh, the man says I can't do that. You know, which is, I mean, even them telling you that you can't use crystal meth or something is debatable, but when I'm talking about just purely unadulterated plant, like literally just a plant you could grow in your yard, like a cactus or a coca plant or cannabis plant or whatever, that there's some body of authority saying you can't do that. It's just like, what?
Yeah.
Who gave you that authority? That's retarded. It's ridiculous.
You know, one of the things that changed my mind about plant medicines being potentially good for people was just thinking about pharmaceuticals. And like, I think we all have family members that are taking SSRIs or epilepsy meds or some type of thing that affects the brain. And I feel like it's largely the pharmaceutical industry that's doing this like anti, all these things, whether it's coca or ketamine or, all the Rick Doblin MAP stuff. It's like that has efficacy, right? I mean, it's proven. It's just, maybe not everybody should be on it, but I mean, it'd be a lot healthier than pharmaceuticals for a lot of things.
Oh my God, dude. I mean, whenever I talk about psychedelics and plant medicines, I always give the caveat that when I share my experiences with them, it's literally just that. I have no idea if they'll be good for anyone else. Maybe not. Maybe no one in the whole world should do it except me. I don't know. But my experience has been positive, and something that I've also been very cautious and prudent and used a lot of discernment, like around with whom, when, where, what's happening, how often. It's not just, especially as someone who's in addiction recovery, it's even more sketchy and nuanced, I think, for me because of my past. If I go off the rails and I lose myself, it could be extremely detrimental to my well-being, if not my life. But when I've had those experiences, especially with in the context of working with shaman and indigenous cultures where there's a lineage of that going back, these were the psychotropic drugs of antiquity. Like, this is how we stayed sane before there were SSRIs. I mean, like, most human cultures had some form of psychedelic or plant medicine, and it's like medicine of the mind or medicine of the soul, and has tremendous healing potential, but again, is also not something that's right for all people at all times. And maybe even like you're like, yeah, I've not really felt called. That's a really important thing to be aware of, because to just jump into that pool because everyone's doing it and maps and all the studies are coming out and it's becoming legal in different places, like that's not a good reason to explore that realm, because it can really shake you up. I mean, I've had friends personally that never got addicted, because these things generally are not addictive, but just that have been a little bit too enthusiastic about it and have kind of lost their shit, right? And just got thrown off. I mean, they came back, but they kind of went Sid Barrett for a while, just like Shine On Crazy Diamond. Whoa, what happened, man? Like, one friend in particular is like, yeah, I need some time off. Like, I'm going to disappear. You know, I'm still your friend, but like I am fucking tripping. And just had to take a pause, like a hard pause from life, because just too frequent, mixing too many medicines, you know, in succession after the other, doing mushrooms, then going and doing bufo, then doing this and doing that. And I think the temptation there is in when you have a beautiful and mystical transcendent experience, and you really connect with who and what you really are, you connect with God, or your perceived relationship with God, or you heal deep underlying traumas that no amount of therapy or meds or breath work or meditation or anything could get to, which I've experienced all this. The temptation is like, God, this is so awesome. And I got so much benefit from it. It changed my life in such a positive way and to such a massive degree that I should just do it all the time, because more is better. But when it comes to that realm, that particular principle does not apply. More is not better. More frequently is not, more variety is not better. You know, more frequency, the amount you take, like all of that, it's really like a less is more kind of thing, because it can be so like earth shattering to your reality that it really does take some time to put yourself back together, to reintegrate, because you get disintegrated, right? Who and what you thought you were. And I mean, I'm talking in a deep experience that's done with some intention and some guidance. Everything you think you are gets totally obliterated. And then as you kind of come to and go back to your life, you have to put yourself back together and reassemble your psyche and your persona and your ego, and find the appropriate kind of relationship to those different parts of yourself so that you can then interface in the world in a productive and harmonious manner. And it can get super rocky when you're doing it too often and you don't have time to kind of put the puzzle pieces back together, and you can get really fragmented and frayed. And I think there's a lot of risk in that, but it's not risk out of like stupidity. It's the risk is because it can be so profoundly awesome that one can just get the idea that you should do it more. and maybe you shouldn't in many cases. In most cases, probably, like when you're not sure, a pause is always the best choice. So I just, when I talk about this stuff, I get excited because I have benefited so much, but I feel a sense of responsibility to just say, hey, like also pump the brakes and listen to that inner voice like you have that says, it's not for me, at least right now. That's really important information.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think about like nutrient deficiencies too, like magnesium and like copper and zinc and all these brain nutrients that people are probably going into the experience deficient in, which then just kind of burns out the brain.
Oh, dude.
It's like totally. revving the engine. You don't have any fuel.
Totally. No, there's a lot to that. And also just the dysregulation of your neurotransmitters, you know, the serotonin and dopamine. And I mean, your whole physiology is getting rocked. And sometimes in my experience, I'll come out of those and I'll be on like a real high, like I'll be elated and be in a really good mood for a period of time afterward, kind of this afterglow. And then there's other times where there is a bit of a slump afterward, right? It's like you've been to this altitude of this exquisite dimension, an exquisite experience of what it is to be alive. And then you kind of come back into the density of being a normal person again. It's a little deflating. It's kind of like, fuck, I'm back with the like thinking of what's the Lord of the Rings guy, the little, the villain, the little creature.
Gollum.
Yeah, I'm back with the golems, you know. It's like, God, I was up there with God. What happened? But to your point, you know, I listened to the podcast you did with the mineral shaman guy, and I was like, oh, that's interesting, because I hadn't heard any of that. And actually, for the last couple journeys that I chose to participate in, I megadose like Quinton seawater and magnesium minerals. I mean, with certain medicines, you can't really like drink or eat. It just doesn't work out. But I've found a way over time of kind of working with this stuff where I for sure megadose on minerals before, and sometimes even during, and for sure after. And then also like all of the amino acids and things like that, the essential amino acids and such, all the precursors to the neurotransmitters and all that stuff, to like have the hit be as little as possible in terms of just depleting my energy stores and especially the minerals. I think the minerals are really the key to those experiences being less damaging to your body and also just to the brain chemistry. So I'm a huge fan of that if one can manage to get them in without throwing them up, or, you know, it depends what medicine you're working with, really. You know, some things are just not conducive. Like if you were drinking ayahuasca, it'd probably be difficult to like be pounding quinton because you'd probably throw it up or something, you know. But I think there's going to be an exciting area of kind of research and innovation in terms of people learning how to optimize and really biohack those experiences so that they can be less depleting, and also so that the amount of time you have to step away from your life is not so extreme. It's kind of like what they call in the Eastern traditions of meditation, you know, a householder. A householder is one who practices their meditation and lives their dharma and doesn't have to go live in a cave in Himalayas, but has a family and a job and is like part of society. I think with the psychedelics and plant medicines, part of what makes people feel like they have to kind of give up their life and sort of not be functional anymore has a lot to do with just how depleting they are physically. And if you could fortify yourself and be more resilient and more robust, I think one could probably use those things without as much collateral damage.
Yeah. I was texting you. I recently got into intravenous vitamin treatments, and
yeah, I can't believe you went this whole time without doing that. You're a purist, man. You're a diehard. I was like, holy shit, he just doing this? Wow.
And I was talking to the nurses, and they're like, yeah, I know a guy that flies to Dubai, you know, once a month or whatever, and he does it before and after. And so, you know, before and after travel, or, you know, people that go out drinking, they'll do it before a night of partying. But I was thinking before a ceremony, I wonder if people have tried that to get like a Myers cocktail or something. That'd probably help a lot.
Man, dude, that's a great idea. That's so fun. Like, why did I not think of that? Actually, that's a really good idea, because then you don't have to worry about the effect on the GI. You know, you just bypass that whole system. But I have something on the IVs, and I didn't want to tell you this when you text me. I wasn't going to like put a bad spin on it, but I'm a little concerned about nanotechnology and graphene oxide and all of this shit that is being put into the pharmaceutical products that we can, you know, everyone knows which products, the recent ones that started around 2021 or whatever. I've heard murmurs, and I haven't substantiated this with any facts whatsoever or seen any evidence to this, but something was brought to my attention, and that is, someone asked me like, well, Luke, who do you think makes all those IVs of all these nutrients? It's not vitamin companies, right? It's the pharmaceutical industry that's making those. And I'm like, if what they're doing is what I think they're doing, which is essentially trying to annihilate a large swath of the human population through a mass genocide, that's going to sound strange to some people. I honestly, truly believe that. And call me crazy. I have no problem with that. But if they're really trying to do that, then why would they not touch, you know, the IV bags and things like that, right? I mean, it's like that opens up a whole other wormhole. Like, what can you trust? But, you know, I have seen videos of this meat, you know, at the grocery store that's magnetic, and, you know, the iron filings in the cereal, all this stuff. I mean, there's so much stuff that's put in the food supply, the fluoride in the water supply. There's a lot of nefarious stuff going on, whether you believe in conspiracy theories or not. There's evidence to support that there are nefarious subsects of the government, the food industry, the agriculture industry, the medical industry, pharmaceutical, all that education industry. There are subsects of all those industries, all those entities that are nefarious and do not have humans' best interests in mind, right? So with the IVs, I've been a little like, where'd that thing come from? You know, does it have the graphene oxide? I want to take a magnet in there and like run it on the IV bag. I've gotten a little paranoid just because things are so crazy. It's like, God, what can you trust? I mean, they're probably fine, but it's just, things are so wild right now. I'm just kind of like, God, I don't know. So there's that. And then also what I was talking about earlier, where when you put some food substance in your mouth and you chew it up, and you send a signal to your digestive system, what's coming down the pipe, right? And how to deal with it, what enzymes to activate in order to digest it. When you're doing a liposomal or an IV, you're kind of just like, fuck you, body. Well, I'm putting this in the cells. You know what I mean? It's like there's no sort of relationship with the body of like, do you want this? Do you need this? Like feeling into that intuitive sense of what the body's ready for and what's it not. It's kind of an overriding of the body's innate intelligence. So I think and I'm super guilty of this too, and just something that's kind of a thought experiment I'm having. It's like something I would like to lean into more is finding ways to get real-time feedback from one's body to determine like what's appropriate and what's not in that moment. You know, I've done like high dose methylene blue IVs and I feel great, but like, I don't know, maybe it's too much. Maybe my body's like, whoa, overload. And I could be doing harm in some cases. So yeah, there's no definitive end to that. It's just like, I think it needs more research. Right? Somebody who has a lab needs to take some randomly selected IV bags and like run them through something to see what's in there. Probably fine, but who knows, you know? So anyway, that's one of my paranoid delusions, possibly.
It's a good point. Yeah. Tony Pantelleresco, I've been trying to get on my show. I think he switched to BitChute from YouTube because he got like censored, but he's all the nano detox and he has these pretty elaborate like ways to like, I don't know. He says don't eat any berries because they all have nanotech in them. And so like blend them up and there's this whole protocol to like mix a fat and it become like fat soluble. And then you dump it off and it's very elaborate and I haven't done any of that, but I have been meditating on for years, like ways to detox this stuff, whether they're, you know, dropping from the sky, like nano robots that we are inhaling and stuff. Right. I'm wondering if like, PEMF, like I'm always trying new PEMF units, one on the way. It's really powerful. And I wonder if you could just fry them. You know,
that's a really good idea. And I was researching this recently, and looking into the borax thing, like taking the borax baths and all that to dismantle the nanobots. But I was hearing somewhere, and I forget who it was, that was talking about there are certain frequencies that will disable these technologies in your body, you know, using PMF or RIFE type things. But I forget who it was, and they didn't say like, oh, and it's this frequency set, you know. It's like, well, which ones? You know, there's thousands of different frequencies that you can run through, you know, a Tesla coil or PMF device, all this kind of stuff, you know.
Yeah, that resonant light one I have that my friend Brandon of Shen Blossom told me about. It has like 900 programs on that, and one of them is nano detox. So,
cool!
I should try it and see if I start seeing fibers coming out of my arm.
Margolins shit crawling out of your ears or whatever. Yeah, I mean, dude, the fact is, you know, I'm kind of getting off the deep end here, but we do essentially live in a science fiction comic book. I mean, you just look at the characters on TV that have been given authority to make decisions over our physical health and sovereignty. I mean, you look at these ghouls, these demons. I mean, it really is out of a sci-fi movie with these supervillains. And when you look at it from that lens, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's all a game and we're going to be fine. We're only here in this body for a finite amount of time. And, you know, who knows where we go, but it's not like we're stuck here forever with these ghouls. But it also kind of opens the possibilities of like, they could be up to anything. And it's kind of a waste of time to sit around worrying about it and being paranoid. I mean, you and I are kind of laughing about it, I think, because we both know, listen, like you can't control this shit. The matrix that we're in is just totally out of our control. And so we're given the opportunity to have a little fun with it and experiment and explore and learn. And, you know, as much as we can, keep ourselves and our family safe and protected without living in a fight or flight response to these ghouls and all the supervillain shit that they're up to. That's kind of always the razor's edge for me, is like having an awareness. Yeah, wow, a lot of chemtrails today. Or 5G towers are activating them. And, you know, you see this whole grid that they're creating. And it's like, well, I can choose to kind of live in paranoia about that. Or I can just go out and go, well, at least it's a nice sunny day. You know, I'm getting some particulate of light through the particulate in the air. And you just kind of gotta laugh and just do the best you can, because it can get so depressing when you start going down the rabbit holes of BitChute and these different alternative platforms. And there's probably a lot of stuff in there also that's just total bullshit. That's just fear mongering, paranoid, delusional freaks on the internet making up stories about all this stuff that's actually not true. There's some falsehood, there's some truth. I think that the world is kind of set up in a duality where there really is such thing as good and evil, and there are demonic dark forces that are fighting against the well-being of humanity, just period. It's just the way things are set up. So I try to be one of the good guys as best I can, to have integrity, to help more people than I harm, and just take care of my body in a rational, reasonable way and learn what I can. But there's just so many things you can't control. Like, you're telling me that the shit's in strawberries. I love strawberries. It's like, even the organic ones. Yeah. Well, this guy on BitChute says that even the organic ones, it's like, okay, like, what are you going to do at this point? It's just like,
I think the reasoning behind that is they're more porous. So the more pores something has, the more the nano gets in, which that's the mentality. But yeah, you have good points. And I think it's what can we control, right? And I think that's kind of why you moved to Texas. Partly, I wanted to get into that. Like, my thing is like food security, and it's not to be this neurotic person. Like, I got to be fully off grid, which I am. And, I'm very fortunate, fully off grid, spring water fed house. Like, I have tons of deer and elk around, endless, and like working on fruit and vegetable production. It's great.
Yeah.
But that's like a direction, to head towards, which is doable. Maybe we can't detox all the nano from our body, but like, at least if there's like a manufactured food shortage, which it seems like, that's a possibility.
Totally. Did you hear about all the crabs disappearing, and they like shut down the Alaskan crab season? They're like, they're all gone. Oh, wow. Well, yeah. Oh, wow. All kinds of shady stuff happening. But yeah, moving to Texas, I lived in LA for 32 years, and I had a couple careers there. I worked in the entertainment industry and did all kinds of fun stuff, played music, played in bands, and it really worked for me for a long time. It was exciting. I loved living in the city. I loved access to the ocean, to Joshua Tree, Big Bear, Big Sur, Lake Tahoe, Sedona. I mean, it's a really great kind of central hub where you can
Idlewild.
Yeah, Idlewild. Yeah, totally. You can be kind of in the center of the action and build a career and, network and kind of, just build a life as a young person, and then still have access to get away. That was always kind of my MO, was just leaving a lot to get my sanity back. But when the COVID stuff happened, it was just like, I wanted to leave for a long time and maybe move to Idlewild or somewhere, even in California, just like get out in a more rural area. But then California just went like full red commie, and I was just, this is not an option. So then it was a matter of like, all right, which states have the least restrictions in the middle of that thing, because we were house shopping in, I guess it was the end of 2020. And so, we thought of Florida and Texas, and I was even looking at, Idaho, Montana, Arizona, different places. And my first choice was Sedona. We went there for 2 months just because I figured it's very remote. It's a really small town. There's like-minded new age freaks like me there. I don't think I'm new age, but there's like a bunch of nuts like me there making pyramids and shit. So, seemed like a good fit. But yeah, we went there for 2 months and we just hated it there. I mean, it's beautiful. There's great people, but we just didn't feel right. So we came to the Austin area, and within a couple of days, we were just like, yep, this is where we're supposed to be. It was just an intuitive feeling. And it checked the boxes of more freedom, we're still in, if you're anywhere in the world and not living as a wild indigenous person, you are in the matrix and you're a slave, period. So it's not like coming to Texas, you're out of the slave system, but it's like slavery light here as compared to California. And I'm not, I don't mean to minimize actual slavery, but there are degrees of slavery and we're in one degree of it. So, we came out here and, people weren't really wearing masks unless you went to downtown Austin, and we live like 30 minutes out of the city, kind of in the country / suburbs, and, no masks. I could go buy a gun immediately, go to the farmer's market, meet ranchers and stuff where I could get my meat and my eggs and the liver and all, raw milk and all this stuff. So I started to kind of fortify things like that. And, I just found in this particular area of Texas, it's really cool because Austin is a very liberal city in the middle of a pretty conservative state. I mean, it's becoming less so. So Austin is a really unique energy in that you have culture because of the more liberal people. You have like great music and really good food and art, and it's got a vibe, like better architecture and just aesthetically more interesting than living in a small little town in the middle of Texas where there's just Trump flags everywhere, and like you go to the AM PM to get breakfast, right? It's just, so downtown Austin's cool, but then you also have, and these are like the people with the Beto and like BLM signs in their yard, and you see a lot of that in downtown Austin. The further away from Austin you get, I mean, you're not seeing Trump signs now, but whatever the equivalent of that would be now. We're not in a presidential, obviously election period, but it gets more conservative the further you get away from downtown Austin, basically. So in the periphery and in that mix, you have a lot of people. I think how I would classify myself as just someone who maybe is socially liberal, but politically a little more conservative. And there's a lot of people with that kind of mindset. So we moved here and there were just a lot of people that are into meditation and breath work and biohacking and plant medicines and yoga and like all the stuff that's really helped to improve my life. And there's also just a lot of people here that are kind of like you and I in our field, people that are have online programs and do podcasts and YouTube channels and writing books and just doing great productive work in the world that's helping a lot of people. And so there's like a real convergence of like-minded people here that believe in freedom and don't hate America, but also are like totally cool if people of the same sex want to get married or whatever, it's like, who cares? So I find a lot of people here I can speak freely around, and we kind of get each other. I mean, large numbers of people, right? Whereas in California, I mean, around certain people, I couldn't really be myself because I would be ostracized or judged and called a white national or whatever. But if I was somewhere super conservative and I was going to doing plant medicines, they would call me a druggie or a hippie or whatever, So I found that this place in this area in Texas is conducive to the culture that I feel most comfortable with. And it does feel a bit more secure in terms of like the baddies coming to get us. It's like, we're very fortified here and people really love their freedom. So there's kind of an ethos in Texas that, that don't tread on me, right? It's like people just want to be left alone and not fucked with. I do unto others as you would do unto yourself. Just live and let live. There's definitely like a strong attitude that represents that sentiment here, which
There's
feels
guns.
Yeah, which feels it feels good. That said, though, like when we were in our U-Haul moving out here, they had snowpocalypse, which I personally believe was a manufactured weather event.
Wow.
And the whole area of Austin, I don't know about other cities, but the whole area of Austin shut down.
Wow.
All the grocery stores were empty. It was like a few days from total societal collapse and Armageddon, maybe a couple weeks at best, right?
Wow.
So I still don't feel very secure here. I don't have generators, all of the stuff you need for prepping, I don't have. I have very little stored food. I'm not growing any food yet. So when I look at the setup you have, I'm like, God, even if I think positive, there's still this vulnerability. Like I still feel permeable and like shit could go south for me and my small family here real quick. And I would be relatively powerless to do anything about it. I feel kind of fragile. So it's like a step up above living in Laurel Canyon in LA where Antifa could have like kicked the door in because of something I posted on Instagram. To being out here where it's like, well, I'm probably safe from my fellow citizens, but not necessarily from the long arm of the law or the pharma police coming to knock on my door looking for my passport or that type of weird shit that could happen if things went really south. So I'll say all that to say you're an inspiration to me because I really, now that I got the house remodeled and everything like works and looks pretty and it's like a nice house, I still feel like afraid that I should have taken that energy and money to just fortify my property and then make it look nice. But I did it the other way around. I made a really pretty nice house that feels very comfortable. Now it's like I feel in a big hurry to catch up and actually get prepped to at least like a logical, sane degree with, some stored food and backup power and, a water solution and things like that. So yeah, that's the story of Texas and how we got out here. But overall, it's very cool here because there's in Austin there's it's very hilly and very green and there's a lot of water.
Mm.
So my preference would be to live in the mountains in the summer and then like the tropics in the winter and the rest of the time live here because it's only nice here for like in the spring for about 3 months and the fall for about 3 months. Then it gets super gray and shitty in the winter. And then the summer is just ungodly hot and humid where you pretty much can't be outside unless you're submerged in a body of water.
Wow.
It's just brutal. Like, yeah, you can't go for a hike. You're like, hey, let's go out into the greenbelt and go for a hike. It's 108 degrees with whatever percent humidity. If you can't cool off, at least for me, I'm going to be miserable. So that's kind of the payoff of being here as compared to California, which is always beautiful, you know?
Well, I think you're doing great. And I haven't said yet, congrats on getting married.
Oh, thank you.
And I think we have time personally. I don't think, it's always like civilization's going to collapse this year. And there's a lot of people up here like that, where it's like, just like in that fight or flight constantly. Like I remember, I think it was last year, the Vatican went dark for like half an hour or something like that. And everyone was like freaking out. Like that's never happened. It's about to go down. Go and buy gas right now and buy diesel and all this. I'm just like, it's something like that every month and every year. And so, I think it's just steps towards security. And I don't know. I keep thinking of Agenda 2030. There's some great lectures I've seen on YouTube about that. And one funny thing, I don't know if you've heard this, Luke, about Agenda 2030, and I've tried to verify it, but they said like release large predators into urban or into rural areas. Have you heard that? I'm like, are they going to bring in like Resident Evil interdimensional creatures with like gnarly fangs and just release them into forest? I mean, that'd make life more fun, but it would definitely, I'd have to go on hikes with a shotgun,
That's hilarious. I've not heard that, but you do see these programs where they're reintroducing the gray wolf into, a habitat somewhere, which most hunters and like true conservationists think is a really bad idea generally, of like playing God with the balance of species and things like that. I mean, they've essentially ruined Colorado because of the hunting licenses. For example, there's like very few deer and elk, and there's a shitload of bears and mountain lions, because they won't give you enough tags to go like kill bears and lions, So I've not heard that, but conceivably it could kind of work if you had enough of them, right? Just fill the hill country around Austin with fucking wolves, But like what's cool about your property, Matt, is with the the deer and moose and stuff you've got there, and you have a pond with fish in it. God, I'm so jealous. Even though trout are kind of gross, if I was starving and it was a zombie apocalypse, I'd be eating the shit out of some trout.
Yeah.
But what's cool is your property's big enough where you could shoot a high-powered rifle and take down a large game animal without the risk of injuring anyone. Mm-hmm. Like where I live here, I'm still in a neighborhood. It's kind of rural, but there's houses around. So if I get my 22 cheetah with like my super fucking badass scope and this gun shoots like, I think it's 4,000 feet a second or something. It's ridiculous for hunting, but I couldn't shoot it in this neighborhood because it would go through an animal and like through a couple houses probably, right? It just, even in an Armageddon situation, it would just be really unethical to use it in a situation. So I'd have to go on my roof and like have an AR-15 or something, because you can't get, with a shotgun, you can't get close enough. It's like you have to kind of have an understanding of how to use firearms in a more populated area to do so safely, because there's plenty of game here. Like if things went south, there's deer in our lawn. We feed them berries and stuff, and then PETA people on Instagram get pissed at me because I guess you're not supposed to do that. But I don't think my raspberries are going to hurt them any more than the atrazine lawn they're eating up the street myself. But carrots and stuff. But they're everywhere out here, and I think if anything goes down, at least there's the deer. But how are you going to take them down without hurting one of your neighbors? That's the trick.
It's a good point. Yeah, I saw my first close-up bear since I moved here, surprisingly, because I am in grizzly country where I live, and it was a close encounter. So I've been walking after breakfast, and this morning I forgot to bring my bear spray, which I usually carry with me, and I'm just doing a one way because till they're done logging, I kind of have to like do one walk and then turn around, walk the same way. And I'm turning around and I look to my left and there's just a bear just sitting there looking at me.
Oh my God.
There was a black bear, which
Yeah.
aren't, don't tend to be as aggressive as grizzlies. And it was a young one. And it just looked kind of like it wasn't scared. It was just staring and was like, what's going on? So I just
Wow.
walked back. But it kind of wakes you up when you're in the forest and kind of out of the city. Because I think, like you, I was raised, San Diego 30 years, and
Yeah.
you're just kind of ignorant to mountain lions and bears. You just don't think about it,
Totally.
Used to walking on sidewalks, for your walks.
Yeah. I mean, I think the fact that you have grizzlies is the defining factor there, because I lived in Colorado off and on throughout my life, and that's where my dad's from. And he's a long time hunter. He's the one that gave me that hunting rifle I was talking about, actually. It's like his prized possession, all hand built and, tweaked to his specifications. But I've asked him, were you ever, because he used to go out and pack in elk hunting and stuff for like a week, just in the middle of nowhere, sometimes by himself. And he'd have like a pack mule with his stuff, and he'd just roll out there. And I would ask him, I've asked him this a bunch of times throughout my life, Dad, were you ever afraid like a mountain lion was going to get you, or a bear or something? And he just looks at me like I'm crazy. He goes, you know how hard it is to get close to one of those animals? Like, they do not want to see humans. Like, if they're around and they know you're around, they're not coming near you. It's not a concern at all. But I'm looking at these videos, online and seeing these bears jumping on people and just all this crazy shit. And he's like, it's not like that. It's just not. They don't want anything to do with you. If they smell you, like, they're out of there. But I think the reason why is that's not grizzly territory, right? That's like a lot of brown bears and maybe some black bears or something. Different personality. But what he told me recently, because I've asked him this a bunch of times because I just can't fathom that he wouldn't like be scared, but he's a real tough guy. And he said, well, it's a little different now because like in downtown Aspen, you have bears rummaging through the trash. And he said, when bears get dangerous is when they get acclimated to people and they're not afraid of you anymore. He goes, when you're in the outback, way out in the Rocky Mountains, they're scared shitless of you. They smell you from however many miles away. They're going to avoid you at all costs. But once they see humans as a food source and not as a threat, because of the, the refuse that we leave behind and stuff, he said that's when they get dangerous and aggressive because they just don't give a shit. They're not afraid of you physically now because they've seen you enough times. And maybe even like, it might even, I don't know how long it takes for these things to imprint, but imagine like a few generations of like an urban bear, right? Or even just cubs being with the mama bear and seeing like, oh, there's people, we're not afraid of them. And then those bears grow up and get big and they're still not afraid of those humans, So it's, yeah, it's funny. Our relationship to the natural world is fascinating. How we've just kind of, I don't know, we're such a sore thumb in our environment. Our lack of integration into the natural world is really interesting to me.
Yeah, I know you've interviewed Daniel Vitalis several times. I listened to him speak at Lightning in a Bottle when I used to go to that music festival years ago, and that whole topic of rewilding is interesting. I mean, that's something that I dabbled in with, like making acorns into food and, kind of, experimenting with hunting a little bit, but it's such a different world that it's such an investment to start to learn about and experience it.
Yeah, you have to have a real passion for it. I mean, he just, and now I'm sure he's built this wild fed brand and he's got a TV show. I mean, he's really like abandoned the health food world. He still has his brand Surthrival, but it's kind of just a, auxiliary interest of his, I think, at this point. But I think for someone like that, it works because he just really enjoys doing it. I wouldn't enjoy collecting acorns and like harvest, processing them into flour. Like I literally would hate that. I know. I just don't like tedious shit like that. I went boar and deer hunting when I first moved here. And the hunting part was interesting. I shot a big male boar, and it was a really deep and powerful experience. It was a very meaningful experience for me at the first time doing that, like as an adult in a very conscious and deliberate way. But then it came to process the animal, and I was like, this is a lot of work. Can I pay someone to do this part? This sucks. I just don't enjoy it. You know what I mean? I mean, it's a great skill to have. I mean, I'm glad I kind of get how to quarter an animal, which any animal, large or small, is essentially the same process. But I think there's some people that just really actually enjoy that work of like processing an animal down and making it into food. It's just not something I particularly enjoy. But it's also very disempowering to know that you're not really proficient and badass at those things, even if you never had to do it your whole life and society stabilizes itself and we all sing Kumbaya in the end of this shit show. Still just knowing like nature will kick your ass is disempowering. That's the thing I don't like. So that motivates me to learn a little, but to go to that extreme, you got to really, really enjoy it and be passionate about all of those skills to get really proficient at each of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's my goal the next year or two is stocking I have 3 chest freezers here, and being fully off grid, you'd think they use a ton of power. They actually don't. It's more the heaters that take power. Like I have like to keep my coffee warm and stuff. But yeah, I've been buying like top sirloin, 30 to 40 pounds. And I usually eat a steak a day roughly. And, but it would be another level of security to only have, wild game in my chest freezer instead of beef from the store.
Right.
I'm sure that's a different, feeling that you get from but anyway, Luke, I know we're getting near the end. Do you want to go through some of these questions that listeners sent in?
Yeah. When I listen to your show, I'm always curious, where are your listeners submitting those questions to you?
Instagram. So,
okay.
I just put the little question box and
dude, it's so funny because I thought he must not be doing that because I do that before I interview someone and literally not one person ever asks a question. I'm like, okay, I guess this is not a participation game here. All right, I'm on my own.
I think because I've been doing it since the start, so I'm like almost up to 200 shows or whatever. And
right.
I think for almost every show I've always done it, so I've kind of people know I've been training them.
That's cool. No, I love that. It makes your job easier as a host, like I spend hours prepping for my interviews. That's one of the reasons I was like, maybe someone else is going to think of something that I won't. And then no one posted. I'm like, oh, it's all on me again.
Well, I want to say I liked your, one of the last ones I heard is probably the melatonin one. And it was so counter to what I believed, because I think we all were programmed by like, Jack Cruz stuff, just like take melatonin, you're going to shut down your own production. And I forget the gentleman you interviewed, but
John Lieurance.
Yeah, that was really great. And and Doris Lowe is really into melatonin, high dose for cancer and for COVID. So she created a COVID protocol using melatonin.
Yeah,
but
yeah. Well, doing the John Lieurance Mitozen is his company. Mm-hmm. He's got an oral like liposomal melatonin, but what he is most known for is the suppositories, and those are, I think, like one of them I think is 60 milligrams. The other one's one's 150 and the other one's 300. I think.
Wow,
that's a lot. But the thing is when you and you might have learned this in the podcast, but just for those listening, it's interesting when you take it orally. It has a really short half-life in your system, right? So it can help you fall asleep, but not necessarily stay asleep because you just metabolize it. When you're doing the suppository, it's like getting an IV drip of melatonin all night, essentially. Now, that said, I don't use those very often. I was kind of excited when I first got them. Now I kind of use them if I feel like I'm getting sick at all, if I need to like change time zones and really disrupt my circadian rhythm from travel. Or if, I was up late a couple nights and I really, really want to make sure that I get like 10 hours, 12 hours sleep, I'll do them. But I found with that high dose that if I take them too late in the day, that I'll be really groggy the next morning. It's like hard to get back awake and feeling like my cognition turned back on. So I eventually figured out with those things is kind of take them as needed, not regularly. And then I pretty much, speaking of the suppositories, I would apply one like right at dusk. And then by 9 or 10, I'm like, just can't even keep my eyelids open. But then by the next morning, I've metabolized it and I can wake up at a normal time. But it took me a minute to suss that out. But yeah, the benefits of melatonin are insane, dude, because It's the most potent antioxidant in the human body. It's the most potent anti-cancer molecule in the human body. And studies have revealed that you do not actually disrupt your endogenous production of it like you would a hormone like testosterone or something. But that said, it's still, like I said, it's at that high of a dose, it's pretty gnarly. And I would only use it myself, like when needed in more of a strategic manner.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, Doris says that our production is lowered because of living in a microwave world.
Yeah.
Even if we're blocking blue light, which I thought was an interesting concept.
Dude.
You always hear if you're blocking blue light,
yeah,
you're still going to make all the melatonin, but maybe it's both would help. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, John, the first time I talked to John on the phone, he was like, "Hey, did you know that the the piezoelectric effect in the pineal gland is responsive to light?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's why I block the blue light." He goes, "Yeah, but RF to your pineal gland is light." Right? It's outside of the visible spectrum, but it's still in a sense light. And he's like, yeah, and that trashes your melatonin production. I was like, God damn, like, the EMFs get you like at every angle, Yeah, I forgot about that actually. Thanks for reminding me. One more thing to be paranoid about.
Yeah, I have Starlink here, and I have the router shield on it from like less EMF or whatever.
Yeah.
And I just unplug it at night, but I've forgotten some nights, and my bedroom is out of range, so it's perfect. So even if I do forget,
that's
I'm still
great.
not in the Wi-Fi bubble, which is ideal. But.
That was I know you have questions. I'll add one thing to that just because I'm so happy. But when we moved in this house, it's the first house I've ever owned. So I would kind of half-ass EMF mitigate rentals before, and I did a decent job. But this one we painted the rooms, like with the paint, and did a mesh underneath the wood floors. So basically like Faradayed the bedrooms. And then also the house was built in 2004, so it has Ethernet ports in every room. There's even an Ethernet port in the kitchen and the laundry room. It's super weird because they, back then they wanted to put a phone on the counter. I don't know what they were doing, but I moved in and I was like, yes, I'm probably the only nerd that's like stoked that it's hardwired. So what we did is we hired an AV company to come in and do all of the networking and whatnot. The computer networking. And so they installed 3 like high powered router hubs in different places. Well, 2 in the house and 1 out by the pool. And then there's an app that runs on your cell service on your phone. So you can just turn the Wi-Fi routers on and off at will with an app. So basically we just never have the Wi-Fi on in the house at all. The only time we turn it on is like, I don't know if my wife is out by the pool and wants to use her laptop or something. So it's really rad. It's a totally different feeling in the house to just have no smart appliances. FLFE is on. I know you don't believe in the Lila blocks. I saw you throw yours in the garbage, respect, each their own. I like the Lila blocks. I have those and, all the things, right? The Blue Shield stuff that I think you turned me on to back in the day. So like all of the harmonizing stuff is there, and it's also not on, and the bedrooms are blocked. But the one thing I wanted to maybe ask you, if you've heard anything about this or what your take is, there is one school of thought that believes that when you Faraday your bedroom, that you're eliminating the positive cosmic energy, just the ambient energy from the solar system, the sun, the moon, all of that you're now essentially doing that thing that they did wherever it was in Russia or something, where they buried those guys in the underground bunkers and they all like got heart disease or some shit in like 2 weeks.
Right.
Now, my theory on that is that because even with our rooms Faradayed, you still get a very faint signal on your phone. It works like shit. And if you go in with an RF meter, it's in the green. You're not seeing any RF. We put the film on the windows, or had them professionally install the RF blocking film. So it's not blocking like all radiation because stuff still kind of works in there a little bit. So my theory was like, that very subtle sort of scalar cosmic energy range is probably still permeating the room, even though you have the shielding paint, which is blocking other people's Wi-Fi routers and smart shit in your neighbor's house and the cell tower that's 2 miles away, right? So I don't know. What do you think about that? Of like, is it dangerous or unhealthy to Faraday your sleeping environment?
Yeah, that's a really good question. because I've interviewed a bunch of guys on EMFs, like the Defender Shield guy and owner of Electra Health, Sean, and just asked various really smart people, building biologists and stuff about that. And one thing that made sense to me, because we're talking about school children getting blasted with, with 5G tower or whatever, and they were like, an easy solution is just paint the wall in between the tower and the school children, and just one wall, they were saying, would help. I know with the sensory deprivation room I built here into the house, I did 2 coats of the Y Shield. I think it was like their ultimate, like the strongest paint.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to wonder if it's good, because at my previous house, I had one of Max's, Max Vitality float pods, and it wasn't EMF shielded. And I felt amazing. I think my first couple floats were like 2 to 3 hours. And then with this one, I felt a lot of anxiety, 30 to 40 minutes in. And I'm starting to wonder if it's what you're talking about. Like I'm not grounded enough or getting that.
Interesting.
I mean, the door's not painted, so some's coming in the door, and I need to ask Max if I'm grounded touching that salt water. I would imagine that it's grounded.
Yeah.
But if that,
it's the EMF thing, dude, is so nuanced, and
it is
literally, I mean, you have like the EMF, there's levels of experts, right? You have the guys that make the blocking products and stuff, right? And the building biologists. And then you have a tier above that, which is the actual physicist. And I had a physicist guy that I was talking to he does mitigation out here called EMF Nights. And I ended up working with Brian Hoyer and Shielded Healing instead. But the way he was explaining to me, he's like a high level physicist. And he said, and I didn't ask, he's for Faraday. He's not worried about the cosmic energy and all that. What he said that was terrifying is he said, what most people are looking at when you're looking at the detrimental effects of, just speaking of RF, like cell towers, et cetera, everyone's like bitching and freaking out about 5G. He said what very few people are talking about from a physics standpoint is that it's not only what that, 30 gigahertz 5G tower is transmitting towards your house, it's how's it interacting with the very old LTE, 3G, 4G. So you have all these different frequency ranges that are now kind of creating a mesh of even more chaos in terms of incoherence. And he said, where these things converge, and he's tested this, where they converge in your house can make a huge difference. And so to your point of like blocking one wall, if you have, say, an old 3G tower that's, 1800 megahertz or whatever coming from down the road to the north, and you block that wall, you could have another tower that's even further away that's in the 5G range, right, that's coming in. And so you're creating this crazy ass incoherence. Wow. So he's like, you fucking block everything. And that's the answer, because we don't even know how these frequencies interact with one another and kind of create rogue mutant frequencies themselves because of the combination of harmonics.
Interesting. That's what maybe Brian Hoyer talked to him, because when I sat down with Brian of Shielded Healing, I was decked out in No Choice, and I've since calmed down with EMF. I mean, floating ground, I think it works, instead of the EMFs going through you, they're going around you, makes sense. Right. But now I mostly just wear them when I travel, like in big cities and stuff. But I sat down with them and I was full gear of, just armored up. And he was questioning the safety of them, basically saying what you're saying is that when the EMFs hit the silver, it's creating another different frequency, which has different effects and different penetrations. And
dude, I can't wait till all the physicists kind of get together and there's a cohesive point of view, and maybe that'll never happen. But yeah, with the EMF blocking clothing, I've talked to Brian about that too. And he's like, well, you're walking around, and I still wear it. I have my lambs underwear on right now. Like even if it's just placebo psychosomatic and I feel like my nuts aren't getting fried by by my cell phone or whatever, it's worth it. But yeah, he was explaining to me that you are kind of a walking antenna because you're walking around in a bunch of metal. And so, but again, it's not like conclusive. We don't really know. Like maybe if you're wearing the No Choice or the lambs underwear or whatever, and the silver's not touching your skin, which is conductive, then it could be bouncing off you, but it could be getting into your skin if it's touching. So it's so freaking confusing. And at a certain point, I'm almost like, you know what, who cares? Whatever. I'm going to just do the best I can and hope for the best, because there's just so many conflicting points of view around the issue.
I think going with how you feel is a good thing, right? Like I feel good when I fly wearing my EMF shielded clothes.
Me too. Yeah, I wear my no choice thing. I just went to Utah. I did that. The other thing that gets confusing in this world is to earth or ground or not to earth or ground. And Brian, we did I made an EMF course called the EMF Home Safety Master class, and I did it with Brian Hoyer. And one of the tests we did in the videos for the course was we tested skin voltage grounded and not grounded while being exposed to an electric field. And what we showed conclusively was that grounding in and of itself is probably not a great idea if you are within the range of an electric field. In other words, like if your skin voltage is showing that you're picking up an electric field, if you ground in that field, you're becoming the conduit for that electric field, that AC current, to go through your body into the ground on that grounding mat or pad or whatever. And I was like, God, I've been grounding all these years. No matter where I am, I'm always grounded, you know? Yeah. And then the other thing is the dirty electricity. If you're grounded to the outlet in your house, if that's not a coherent field, you're picking up the chaos of that dirty electricity too. So it's just like, oh my God, nobody can even like agree on the grounding. And then the Stetzer guy, I think it was on your show, I heard him say, even if you're grounding outside, there's all this stray AC current, and you're in your backyard on your lawn thinking you're stoked. Well, if you tested the currents on the ground, you're not only, getting the DC current and picking up those electrons, but you're getting like, dirty electricity coming out of the dirt. It's just like, okay, at this point, you have to, like you said, you got to pay attention to how you feel, get really tuned into the body, and just follow your own inner guidance, because you can find an EMF expert that's going to disagree with every other point of view out there. It's insanity.
It's true. Yeah. But I think nerds like us really enjoy the complexity and the nuance of it, because there are infinite details with all this stuff. And funny story with the no choice. It was, I think it was near the start of COVID, maybe in the middle of it. And I was flying down to see my family in California. And this is when masks were required to fly.
Yeah.
And I wore the no choice jacket, and I zipped it all the way up, and I actually wore the cape too. So I had the cape. I was like a superhero. And I posted a selfie on social media, and it got taken down. I think people reported it for a hateful organization. And I realized, looking at the picture, I looked like a KKK member, because it was like the point, when you zip up the no choice.
Oh my God. Dude.
So I wonder if I looked like that to people in the airport, because it has the eyes cut out, the silver eyes, and that's the point.
Dude, I was wearing the same thing, and it was a really great, I never got accused of that, fortunately, but it was a great hack, because I wanted to wear that, like the baklava thing or whatever, like the ski mask hood thing that he made. I wanted to wear it just for the Wi-Fi on the airplane, but I was kind of embarrassed. But then when COVID happened, I was like, yes, now I can like not feel insecure about wearing that stupid head, wrap. And then I wore it on all my flights during COVID, and only one flight attendant gave me problems with it. She was like, sir, that's not a surgical mask. And I looked up and I was like, ma'am, we're in the middle of a deadly pandemic. This is an antimicrobial, blah, blah, blah. And I rattled off all this stuff that I made up about the mask being superior to the little paper ones full of graphene oxide and nanobots. And she was like, didn't really have a rebuttal, and just let me wear it, And then I think toward the end of the masks and planes thing, then it got to be where they wouldn't go for it. Like the last couple of flights I took, they were like, no, bro, like that's not going to suffice. Yeah.
Yeah. I got called out almost every time by a flight attendant, and I think it was the baklava without the hood was the problem, because I kept walking in, and after the third flight, the no choice guy, I forget his name, that owns the company, he told me, oh no, dude, you have to wear the hood with it, so that way it looks like it's a mask versus, because they would always approach me at the seat and be like, that's not a real mask, but we'll let it slide this time. That after the So I walked in with the hood and I look a little weird,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
like I'm
yeah.
like a terrorist walking on the plane,
Oh my God, dude.
Just
What
such
a
weird times. I mean, it's like Halloween 24/7.
what a farce. What a fiasco. Just you got to just laugh at a certain
Yeah.
point, It's like
Hmm.
unless you got the thing, then you might not be
Hmm.
laughing, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm fortunate my whole immediate family didn't get the jab, and that seems like that's the minority from people that I talk to. It's like either their mom or the dad got it or both, and then it's
Hmm.
creates this tension and they can't talk about it. Just changes the whole family dynamic. It's so weird.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. And it's funny because during that period, there were situations in which people had fear about being around me, being my normal, super healthy, very rarely sick with anything self. And now it's turned into where like I'm actually concerned about being around people that might be shedding on me. It's like I'm actually not the pariah. You guys are. I'm still the same me. You know what I mean? You altered some serious shit within your body, and I don't know if I'm actually safe to be around you. I mean, no judgment, just like self-preservation alone.
Right, right. I love it. Well, do you want to do a few questions?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. And I'll
let
try
me.
to. I'm totally fine on time, by the way. I'm
Okay,
totally cool. So you're the host. Whenever you want to cut me off, I'm happy to conclude, but I also have time for questions. Sure.
great. Okay, yeah. Feel free to do rapid fire or whatever. This is a good question. I just had 4 cavities filled for the first time in my life, and no, it wasn't the sugar. I don't think. I think I had them for years before I started rape eating. But
It was the repeat Cokes, the Mexican
right,
Cokes.
even with cigars, it's like I swish with bicarbonate water, which does mitigate the smoke
Yeah.
harmful effects. But my inflammation went down, and so now I'm like interviewing a holistic dentist at the end of this month, and all into like the dental inflammation connection. And so someone asked dental biohacking if there's anything like you got me
Yeah.
into the cold lasers. I don't use them. I should probably should.
Yeah. Like on your teeth.
Yeah, because I read some
Yeah.
studies like using those on the gums and stuff. Super
Yeah, that's actually a
beneficial.
good idea. I've not heard that, but that makes a lot of sense. I mean, you're going to get mitochondrial activation in the cells in there,
Mm-hmm.
using the right wavelength. Yeah, it's funny, man. I have very few regrets about my life, Matt, and I've made some horrific mistakes. I mean, the first half of my life, I was just a total train wreck. But I learned from it, and it's been kind of part of my journey of healing and awakening is just the things that I've overcome. But one thing that I really regret is not taking care of my teeth and not listening to dentists when they told me to wear a night guard, for example. I thought they're trying to scam me for $700, so I never wore it. Letting cavities go too long and just being spaced out and just not paying attention. And so my teeth have been very, very problematic. So it's it's a question that's near and dear to my heart. I think a couple of the most important things are finding a biological dentist that really understands some of the foundational issues like the dangers of root canals, tooth extractions, when to get an implant or when not to, being testing the biocompatibility of the products that are used for fillings or for implants. The dentist that is going to use ozone for sterilization when they have to do some work in there. Obviously, they're not using fluoride. They're altering the terrain of your original native teeth as little as possible, right? That's like such a fundamental principle. I had dentists, and I even went to some good dentists back in LA, but they removed tooth matter that could have been probably left alone. And so now, over time from teeth grinding and just having fillings done kind of carelessly, now I have massive pieces of missing original tooth matter that now has to be replaced with porcelain or God knows what, But I think if you go to a highly reputable biological dentist, they're going to be aware of some of this stuff. And also, one of the huge pieces I'm sure many people are aware of is the metal mercury containing amalgam fillings. I mean, hopefully no one listening to your show is still, actively putting those in. But I think that if someone has any metal in their mouth, that would be for me, that would be of the utmost high priority to find a qualified biological dentist that follows best practices and how to safely remove those. Because it's a whole thing. Like they're going to put you on a vitamin C IV. They're going to use these really powerful suctions and filters and to ensure that you don't reabsorb that mercury as it gets vaporized from disturbing it with the dental tools and stuff that they use to get it out. But I think most dentists that are biological and belong to those organizations, I don't remember what they are offhand, but there's a number of reputable kind of organizations where people are licensed and educated further than just their normal dental license, like they're accredited biological or holistic dentist. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I remember years ago, like Robert Cassar was one of the first people I followed, and he was recommending a dentist in Tijuana, Mexico, that put in like amethyst and quartz as fillings.
Oh, really?
I'm glad I never went that route, because I'd probably prefer to get dental work in the States. I mean, you go to Mexico and you want to like save money, I think.
Yeah. I mean, that medical tourism, I think, has its place. I mean, with stem cells, that's something people in alternative cancer treatments. I mean, I think there's probably a time when leaving the country is good, because you can get things that are regulated by the FDA that will really help you. But yeah, with dentistry, I mean, it's the thing. If you go to someone who's kind of fly by night and sketchy, there's no turning back once you start drilling into your teeth. That's the problem. Or doing an extraction or a root canal that gets a cavitation. Now you've got bacteria going into your bloodstream that has a cascade of all kinds of autoimmune and other issues. I mean, your mouth is really, really just so critical to the rest of your overall health, not to mention the meridians. And I mean, who knows what like problems I have or will have just from having so many teeth that have been drilled out, and the meridians and the nerves are just totally disrupted. I mean, I'm sure the bioconductivity of my body has been compromised because of the poor condition of my teeth. So it's definitely not the thing I would be like, oh, I'm going to save a few bucks and drive down to TJ, and just look for a dentist. It's like, if you're going to spend money on something, the dental work is probably something to be discerning and really choosy about, in terms of who's digging into your mouth.
Yeah. You look at the organs connected, and it's multiple. It's like 4 or 5 at least for each tooth. And
Yes.
It's crazy. My highly sensitive CRP went from 10 to 0.5 in about 2 weeks after getting, and I think it was just a lot of gum inflammation because I just let it go for years and didn't take care of it. Now I'm like on the Sonicare and the water pick.
Yeah.
Just like really religious.
Dude, I just got a water pick. It's
Nice.
like a game. It's the best ever. It's the game changer. It's so cool. Yeah, I'll put colloidal silver in there and like all my little shit, like the food grade hydrogen peroxide, the strong, whatever, 35% stuff, a little of that. And yeah, it's crazy and much, actually much faster and less annoying than flossing. And I think works better, because you get that water and whatever you put in the water up under your gums. It's just amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. This is kind of a big question: how to recover from depression.
Oh man, God, that's a great question. It's funny. I hadn't experienced depression for a very long time until recently when I quit nicotine. It was like there was about 2 days there. I mean, I used to live like this all the time. I mean, just oscillating between suicidal depression and just being paralyzed by anxiety. And this went on for a long, long time. But I haven't felt that for a very long time, where I was just in this, I was apathetic. I was just like, nothing matters. Why bother? Why am I even alive? Just like super dark thoughts. And it was really, I mean, it wasn't scary because I know that it's going to pass, and I'm not going to act on any of those dark thoughts, especially the self-destructive or suicidal ones. But anyway, the point is, I really know what that's like. And I mean, it's a massive, massive question. But for me, it's always about, what are the root causes? Are there things that I've experienced in my life that were traumatic, whether, lowercase t, capital T, that are unaddressed and that I've repressed and suppressed, and those are kind of percolating in my psyche beneath the surface, and I'm not really able to make a connection between that event and how I feel now, but somewhere in the subconscious exists prior suffering and prior hurt that has not been worked through and really felt and healed, so that's that kind of investigative shadow work that one might lead into therapy or EMDR or hypnosis or even plant medicines or psychedelics in some cases, not all. So that's like the root cause of it. And then for me, I gotta say, and this is like so kind of basic, but there is nothing that helps my positivity and my mood more than the following things: watching the sunrise every morning, like safely sun gazing, depending on where you are on the horizon. Like where I am now, I can't really like stare at the sun because it's already been up for a few minutes behind a hill. But I look maybe 45 degrees below the ball of the fire, and I do that every morning, did it this morning. And then a breath work practice. I do a breath work for about 10 or 15 minutes, a meditation practice, and then the hot and cold. Getting in the sauna. I've got a sauna space sauna with these great red lights, these incandescent bulbs. And I put like 2 panels of 4 bulbs in there. So it's just insanely hot and bright. I'll go in there for 20 minutes and then hop in my ice bath for, I don't know, I don't even time it. It's probably, 30 seconds, maybe a minute. I went through the phases of ice bathing where I was trying to be macho and like show people how badass I was because I could breathe calmly, and I can still do that, but it's just like such a stupid flex that I just was like, I'm just going to stand until I feel like I'm done. And sometimes that's 5 minutes, sometimes it's 30 seconds, but the sun gazing, the meditation, the breath work, the hot and cold exposure, to me, this is the formula for just mood elevation, provided it's not something that's reoccurring from suppressed traumas or some emotional issues that I've avoided or haven't worked through, but in terms of like brain chemistry and serotonin and all that stuff, I don't believe in the pharmaceutical psychiatric model of serotonin, SSRIs. I just think all of that is false and fake. I think that each of us has the ability to be sane, happy, fulfilled. It's all in lifestyle choices. And, if I'm dealing with the underlying trauma and just discontent or whatever issues I'm having in life, and then I'm applying some of the practices and I've got fulfilling relationships, at least one, primary person in my life with whom I share healing intimacy, and they can lean on me and I can lean on them, which for me happens to be my wife. It could be a best friend or a couple friends, but that social connection, I think, is a huge part of it too. Taking the world on your own, even if there's people around, but you don't have closeness and you don't have the safety to really be intimate and to share your innermost thoughts and feelings with at least one person. I mean, I think that's why therapy can be valuable. We probably wouldn't need therapy if we had really close, healthy relationships in our life, because we could just go talk to our spouse or brother or sister or mom, dad, whatever, but because we're so culturally disconnected in many cases, a therapist is needed because no one else will listen to you, or you can't trust anyone like you could trust a professional. So those are my feelings on that. And if the person wrote that ever hears this, just know, man, if a guy like me cannot kill myself and make it to 52, anyone can, because I was such a miserable, toxic, dysfunctional, mentally ill would be applicable, but I don't want to minimize people that, are bipolar and have schizophrenia. I wasn't mentally ill in that sense, but my thought process and my behavior was completely insane and erratic. And I was addicted to heroin and crack and alcohol and all sorts of other things. And I'm like pretty happy most of the time from just doing the things that I just described.
That was awesome. Have you heard the correlation, Luke, between like screen time and social media and depression and anxiety? I think I've seen some studies where like the more people are sucked into the internet like that, because to me, like back to what you said, like taking social media breaks, and it doesn't have to be like, well, even once a week, could be once a month. For me, it works. And just taking like a few days off or a week off, that does so much for my mood, especially combining that with quality time with my girlfriend, face-to-face human interaction, just disconnecting from, I mean, especially social media, it can be so like unhealthy.
Oh my God. No, I'm so glad you mentioned that, dude, because this morning I was I mean, I was in a good mood by the time we started this, and I felt like happy and ready to chat and all that. But earlier I felt a little off. It's probably some of the nicotine withdrawal or who knows what. But this morning I got up and I did my sun gate, basically did the routine I just described. In the interest of time, I won't say it again, but I did all those things. But the difference today, and sometimes I fall victim to this, is I got on my Telegram. I was looking at, which is the worst place. I have a Telegram channel. It's the most depressing channel on the whole app. It's just all fear porn, negativity. The world is going to hell kind of stuff. I looked at that. I went on Twitter, checked my Instagram, and then I did my breath work and meditation. And I was like, why do I feel off? And it's because I got the sequence wrong. Mm-hmm. Because I went into the metaverse before going into the universe, right? The universe within. I got subconsciously drawn into like those dopamine hits and refreshing and, refreshing, right? Instead of like actually refreshing my spirit, my mind, my body, my emotions. And then like coming to social media, to the computer, there's, for me, a higher degree of resiliency and detachment from all that shit when I've started my day and have that sense of sovereignty and just am aware of my subtle emotions and feelings and what I'm thinking about, where I'm putting my attention, it's so easy to get sucked into it. So I totally agree with that. And the last thing I'll actually say about the depression, which I didn't, because it's not huge for me. This is probably the one I'm the weakest in, and that's like movement, right? Just getting the heart rate up, sweating, jumping on the Carol bike or throwing around a kettlebell or whatever. I just don't like exercising. So it's not, I always forget to mention it. When I do it, I feel amazing. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to do this every day. And the next day comes, I'm like, I didn't really like that. It's like, someone's interviewed me the other day and they're like, why don't you like exercising? And I go, well, I guess it's as basic as I hate the feeling of having my heart race and sweating. Like I don't like being out of breath. That's pretty much what exercise is. And I don't like that feeling. I don't know. I wish I did. But, that said, I still do, I have the discipline to work out pretty hard a couple days a week, but I'm always shocked by how much that helps my mood. And then of course I'm like, oh man, I should be doing this more often. I feel amazing. It's just such a great way to alleviate anxiety and just tension in your body and just like get fully full of energy and oxygen and blood flow and just move that energy around. I think it's something I don't do as much now because I live kind of in the country and I don't know, there's no yoga classes nearby, or not like I would ever go to a gym because I really loathe gyms, but even working with a trainer, just doing something, it takes a lot more motivation because I'm just here with my wife and dog and cat now. So if I'm going to like really work out, it's going to take a lot of gumption for me to actually start it up and get it going.
I think we're similar in that way with exercise. And I have friends that are just, it's a hobby and like it can never be my hobby. It's just not my thing. But I find walking to be really easy, and especially in nature. And I don't have headphones in, just walking after breakfast and after lunch, something like that.
Yeah.
I think that's the best exercise, walking. I mean, it's kind of makes sense to me, but I want to ask about the Carol bike. I think every once in a while I'll check your website to see, if you updated it. I try to update mine like every couple of weeks and add something to it that's like the AI controlled bike, right? So it kind of, is it my understanding it's like harder to do, like
it's a high intensity interval training. So it's a HIIT training. I mean, there's a number of different programs you can use, but essentially you have a user profile, and then it's got sensors on the handlebars, which, sense your heart rate and all that jazz. Right. And then depending on what workout or program you choose, it's going to be a series of sprints. And so there's like a pretty long warm up. Maybe I do the one that's like 3 20-second sprints or something, and it's like a 20-minute workout. And there's kind of a long warm up, right? And you're looking at your heart rate on the monitor, and then you just go like balls out, like you're gonna puke kind of thing. And then there's like this breathing exercise that it leads you to do. So the idea with the Carol bike, the AI part of it, is that it gets to know you, and you can never get better at it. Right? Like if you just had a static like sprint program on a workout bike, you would gamify it and you would get better at it. And so you would diminish the returns or the results from it because your body would get used to it. With the Carol bike, you never get used to it. It just keeps getting harder.
Wow.
And so, yeah. So, so I like it for that. And then I have it hooked up to the Live O2 contrast therapy thing where you're going hypoxic, low oxygen to high oxygen. And I haven't really mastered how to use that thing right, I think, because you want to get to the point where you're just dying for air, and then poof, you flip the switch and you go high oxygen and just flood your cells. And I mean, they say that it's even more powerful than a hyperbaric chamber because you're really forcing that oxygen into all those open capillaries that are starving for oxygen, right? And when you go hypoxic. So I totally get the theory of it, and some people have incredible results, but I don't know that I've totally nailed out the marriage between the Carol bike workout and the Live O2, because they both have their own unique kind of protocol. But I think once I nail that, I mean, you go out there for 20 minutes and do that thing. I mean, talk about depression. It feels freaking great afterward.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Sucks doing it. It sucks. But every time I do it, I'm like, Luke, you got to do this every day. This is amazing. And then the next morning, I'm just like, yeah, but I could just go meditate, just lay there. Yeah.
It's funny at the Bulletproof conference, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, I went 3 or 4 years in a row, and I would always see the EWAT, exercise with oxygen boost. And I never used a lot of the equipment. I only, because there's always lines. So I finally got into EWAT a couple months ago, and I combined it with the salt bike, like the fan bike. And it was too much because I just can't do that for 20 minutes straight. It's just so exhausting on that fan bike. Like, that's more an interval thing. Like, you have to do it, then stop. Yeah. I don't think it's human to do it for 20 minutes straight.
That wouldn't be my preference. I mean, that's one thing that's cool about the HIIT training that you do at the Carol bike is it builds in a really solid recovery time. So you're not smoked the whole time, and I've only got 3 sprints, right? And each one sucks, but you just kind of pump, and then the 20 to 30 seconds goes by, and then you can catch your breath and rest again. It's it's a matter of timing the low and high oxygen intervals. I haven't quite figured out whether they go in the rest period or in the high intensity part. The best I can do, and they've done some training with me and stuff because I'm an affiliate with them, and they've been great about training. It's just I suck at calling them and getting more training. But the way they explained it to me was you don't have to get too caught up in the details and the nuance of it. You just want to do whatever workout you're doing with the mask on to the point where you are dying for air. Like, you feel like you are suffocating, and then you're good. Then you flip it to high oxygen and do whatever you're doing. So I think I'm probably overthinking it, when really it's just about getting your body starving for oxygen and then giving your body tons of oxygen. Like, it could be that simple. Right. And I probably make it complicated so I do it less. Because I'm like, it's too hard. Do I want to go out to the garage? It's so complicated. I better not,
Well, this will be my, is it third winter here in Idaho, and I'm going to be more conscious going into it of how much physical exertion I'm doing to clear snow, because I'm going to have a plow truck now. I have a UTV with a plow, a tractor, and a skid steer with a snow blower. So I have 4 ways to clear snow, and you really need them all in my little microclimate because we just get massive dumped on snow. But there's also still the fine tuning of shoveling snow on the steps and stuff. And so I'm sure I'm going to be moving my body regardless. But I'm just going to kind of be more aware of that this winter. That's what I was thinking about it when you were talking, and I was simultaneously listening to you, but it was what if we can build our life to where, we're not incentivized to go on our phone first thing before our routine. Probably when you have a family and children and goats and chickens and a garden, ideally, and all this stuff, it's you have so much stuff to do that you don't even have time to check the Twitter and the Telegram and the social media,
Right. Well, dude, that's, that the app on your phone where it shows you your screen time or I think in Instagram, they even have that. You can click on something that's this is the amount of hours. I mean, it's freaking shocking the way that you can get sucked into that, right? I mean, just the sheer number of minutes slash hours that can get robbed from you. And of course, it's manufactured that way intentionally, right? To just put you in this trance, and you just don't even know that you're in there. So I think that's a great idea. For me, it's almost like I need to have a babysitter that locks my phone in a fucking safe, during certain hours, like 3 hours after I wake up, 3 hours before bed, and just don't let me get to it. Cause I'm much better at it at night. Like I'll leave my phone in my office and just go hang out with my wife, and I don't miss it, cause she's way more fun than any phone. But it's the morning time. That's sometimes where it gets me. And I've been working on that for years, and I have phases where I'm really good at it, and I just wait and I wait. And then when I get to my phone, I feel like my psyche is strong enough to withstand the temptation, and I find I don't get sucked into it as much that day. But when I start my day on the phone, then the addictive, compulsive behavior with the phone is much harder to arrest throughout the rest of the day. It's like you set the precedent for being a slave to that damn phone. It's much harder to break out later on versus like having the autonomy first thing in the day. Like, no, phone, you're my tool, not the other way around. I'm going to wait until I meditate, do my breath work, then I'll engage, So yeah, I think you're right. And also to your point of like homesteading, I've thought about this too, because there's always shit to do around my house. Like I got a guy out in the back right now who's moving all of these river rocks out of my pool drain system because I'm putting some different ones in there. Like that would be great exercise for me, but it's hard for me to rationalize that because I put like an hourly rate on my time, and if you hired me to go do the rocks, it would cost 5 times as much as I'm paying that guy. You know what I mean? Just because, I've worked and built a thing that I make more money than the guy who's shoveling the rocks. I mean, he's probably better at a lot of other shit that I suck at and couldn't get paid to do. But it's like, I'll think, man, that'd be good exercise. Like you should go out and shovel the rocks. And I'm like, yeah, but it's below my pay grade. So therefore, if I can hire someone else to do it, I will. But it's kind of a trap with that, because then I'm going to go out to the garage to exercise when I could have knocked out 2 birds with 1 stone and got the ownership and the pride of like taking care of my property with my own 2 hands and making it beautiful or safe or whatever I'm trying to do out there, and actually gotten some exercise,
Right.
And that's the thing. Like we wouldn't need gyms if we were still hunter-gatherers. Like life is a gym when you're not in the matrix, when you're living off grid. Like your life is literally a gym all day.
Right.
Dragging a deer out of the woods and, doing all the things, right?
I share that same struggle with you, because it's like, yeah, it's like anything, like pitchforking my goat sheds and, putting in new straw for their bedding, or all the little things. It's like, but then I also have to record a podcast or record the intro and outro or, make a post or whatever. It's always like the juggle of like both. And
I know.
Yeah, it's finding balance, I guess. So
yeah, it is. It is.
This is a good question from Max. And we kind of alluded to it earlier, but just your personal thoughts on the whole iron subject. Like, because I think I've seen posts like you've been donating blood for 10 years or something like that.
Oh yeah, long time. Yeah, I went to see a chiropractor in LA. God, it's hard. I have such a difficult time with timelines in my life. It all just kind of blurs together, but it was probably between 10 and 15 years ago. Yeah, that I went to this. His name was Dr. Gareth Monk. I haven't seen or talked to him in many years, but he was the first kind of naturopath doctor that I ever went to that had me get labs, and that also stressed, at that time I was a vegetarian and it was making me really sick. And he was like, bro, he looked at my labs. He goes, you need to eat meat every day. Like you're going to kill yourself. And I did. And he was right. For me, but yeah, he explained to me, yeah, he looked at my labs and I forget, it was the ferritin or whatever values. And he was like, yeah, you got too much iron. So you need to donate blood every quarter. So I started doing it, but I was never really consistent with it. I would put on my calendar, like every 4 months to go to Cedar Sinai and donate blood. And then it would pop up on the calendar and I'd be too busy and I'd miss it. So it's not like I've been doing it the whole time, but that's kind of when I started that and got aware of that. And then after I moved out here, I don't know, I just picked it back up again and I've donated, I think in the last year twice. And then after the first donation, I did a full Monty panel, and I did a podcast with Morley Robbins, who has obviously been on your show a bunch of times, and he did kind of a consult for me during the podcast, which was really fun. And he looked at all my numbers according to whatever his model is. I know his perspective is different probably than a lot of people, and maybe where you've arrived now. But he was like, dude, you're fucking stellar. Like, you're rocking. Everything was perfect according to that model. But going back to what you're saying earlier with choosing a diet of individuality, it's like, how do we feel? Like right now, I wouldn't feel like donating blood. I feel like I'm good. But I felt really great after I did the last couple donations. So it might be a thing for me wherein, you know, I get labs once a year and check those levels, or I might just do it based on how I feel. I feel like my iron recycling is going pretty well. I don't feel like I store it a lot. I'm not getting a lot in, you know, my diet. I'm not eating fortified foods and stuff like that. So it's not a huge concern for me. Like when I think about like the amount of lipofuscin I have, I kind of go by that. And I have very little. There's a couple spots on my hands because they probably get a lot of sun. I get a little bit on my forearms, but I try to be pretty mindful about the PUFAs and the iron and all of that stuff. And that's kind of one indication that there's an iron issue. And I don't really have any signs of that. Like, you know, you've talked about Jack Cruz and all his lipofuscin, you know, from eating all the oysters or whatever. I don't even know about the lipofuscin thing. It's not my area of expertise, but it's more based on the iron thing. It's kind of how I feel and also those labs. And I've never been told I was anemic or iron deficient or anything. Like, no one's ever talked about that at all. The only information I had was the one doctor saying, dude, he didn't call it iron overload. It's like, your iron's too high. You need to go donate every quarter. For whatever reason, I just trusted him, probably because his advice on being a vegetarian was sound. I started eating a lot of steaks and burgers. I felt way better. A lot of my problems went away. So yeah, I'm curious about it because I know you've been researching your genetics and things like that. And, you know, I think you seem to be really buying into the root cause protocol and Morley's thing. And then, you know, like, which I think is really healthy, start doing more research and find that it's a nuanced conversation, and not any health guru or expert is going to have definitive answers or a definitive universal model that's like always true for every person.
Right.
But I think based on the people that I see in my life, I would say, if I had to guess, that more people probably have too much iron in their bodies than have too little. I think it's probably less common for people to be deficient than they are, if not overload, at least not metabolizing the iron that is in their body right, in terms of the recycling and stuff. But I'm huge on copper. I'm huge on the cod liver oil. I love when you started doing the Rosita cod liver oil, because I had stopped, you know, I was like, I don't know, that's fish oil, you know, I was like, so I stopped taking it. And then I started learning from you and your guests about retinol. I was like, oh yeah, dude, when I was a little kid, my grandmothers took cod liver oil. This is like old school, fundamental folk medicine. I mean, this is not like some trend that's out now. This is like OG common sense stuff. So I think between donating here and there, I'm on the Sovereign Copper. I think actually you told me about that one. I really like that. Also use Upgraded Formulas copper, which is like a nano size copper. Take that with food. And I do a fair amount of the Rosita cod liver oil. And I think all of that iron recycling and metabolic energy stuff is pretty good. I mean, I have a shit ton of energy. I'm hardly ever tired, you know?
That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. I actually just reposted my CLF protocol because I'm just moving away from like fear-based thinking, like this is going to calcify you or this is going to cause lipofuscin. I'm finding it's a lot more nuanced. Even with calcification, too little vitamin D or too much can both cause calcification. And I like,
oh, that's interesting.
Write about that in the CLF protocol. And that's, I wonder with lipofuscin, like I've read only 1 or 2% of it is made of iron. It has iron incorporated into it. So I wonder how much of it is just heavy metal detox, because there's like aluminum in there and stuff.
Oh, right.
And I wonder if just supplementing vitamin E regularly is the main thing. That's kind of where I'm at now with lipofuscin. But it's hard to research because there's not a lot out there about it.
Yeah. I know some I can tell you one thing. People that eat a lot of seed oils have a shit ton of lipofuscin. I mean, that's evident just from
Mhm.
people I know in my life. And I try not to be that guy who's like, you're eating dinner with someone and you're like, you're really going to eat those fries? Do you know that's canola oil? But I just observe people that like a lot of the dips and mayonnaise and shit that's full of canola oil. They're full of spots, especially if they go out in the sun a lot. So,
Mhm.
you don't have to be a biologist to understand that, like, it's evident based on just having eyes. You know what I mean? Um, is that the worst thing? I don't know. Are you going to get, fatty liver or whatever because you have spots on your arms? I don't know. I just, again, like back to the diet thing, with the iron and all this stuff, I try to just kind of follow the latest and then make adjustments as it goes. Like to
Mhm.
me, I've listened to all the Morley Robbins interviews you did, and he's like a Jack Cruz type character in that, like, he's very firmly rooted in what he believes. And you could say this about a Dave Asprey, a Ray Pete, Pearl Mutter, Dr. Gundry, any Mark Hyman. Like, you could pick any of these people. They're all going to have solid research that tells you why the thing they're saying is the right thing for everyone, and it's like, not all of them can be right at the same time. And there's still a lot of very well respected, bright people that think you should take a shitload of fish oil every day. My body does not resonate with that. It's just not a good idea. I don't like it, especially because I like being out in the sun a lot. So I made a video, I put a couple of your products in. It's like my top 10 supplements. And it's just and then there's like honorary mentions, which are the fun stuff just to optimize and like get weird. But really the fundamentals that I think keep all this shit in check is the Rosita fish oil, magnesium, vitamin C or whole food vitamin C, shilajit, copper. What am I missing? Maybe some zinc, mineral balancing, just taking, the Quinton minerals, even just like getting a lot of minerals in and trying to get it adequate. Oh, and K2. I mean, it's like, and vitamin E, right? Now I like both forms of vitamin E because I've seen great research on both of them. So I take yours and then I also take the one that's the tocotrienols, I think is the, right. It's made out of like some red palm thing or something. I forget what it's called. But pretty much that's it. It's like 10, 12 things. And then just try to not eat pesticides, try to not eat GMOs. I mean, you take, for me, gluten's a problem. Last night, I was like, for the millionth fucking time, my wife bought these little mini pies and they're on the counter. And I'm like, honey, do these have gluten? She's like, oh yeah, honey, you better not eat them. I was like, yeah, I better not. Ate 2 of them. Woke up with so much heartburn. I had to get up and drink a glass of baking soda. And I'm like burping up, like, I mean, it's just disgusting. And I'm like, because I took a couple of those like gluten enzymes that Bioptimizers make. I mean, they probably help, but not in my case. I think I'm really allergic. So, it's like taking cues from lessons like that when the body's like, bro, don't do this. It's like, listen, my body does not like gluten or the glyphosate that's in the gluten. I mean, in the wheat, probably even more than actual gluten, but yeah, with the iron and all this stuff, man, it's like you can get so caught up just getting dogmatic about all the experts, and you got to just kind of like follow your intuition and see if your symptoms go away. Like when I take a bunch of your Dissolve It All enzymes, I find that, like not with food, just using them systemically, I find I have way less inflammation and pain in my body. Does that mean that like I'm going to die of fibrosis or something? No, it just means like, I don't know, it's gobbling up fibrin or whatever the fuck it's doing. It feels good, so I keep doing it. It's like, I don't need a bunch of health gurus to tell me to do it. I just try it, and if I feel awesome, I just keep doing it until I don't.
That's awesome. I love it. Yeah, I'm one of the fortunate ones to feel fine on gluten. Like I could eat a whole bowl of spaghetti and wake up and feel great. And
you're so lucky. Gluten is my favorite food, and it's like the one that hurts me the most.
I did a consultation with one of the self-decode guys because I signed up with that, Joe Cohen's company, and he was saying I have farmer's genetics versus hunter's genetics, which I do better with, like, be like the anti-Daniel Vitalis.
Like, right, you're domesticated.
That's right.
That's interesting. Wow, that's interesting. Well, that kind of makes sense because I must be the other one because, like I said, I mean, it's a really boring way to eat, but if I pretty much just eat meat and not even vegetables, like meat, potatoes, like some carbs and like starchy carbs. I'm just using potatoes as an example. It could be whatever, rice or anything. But yeah, if I eat just that and various forms of meat, I'm gonna be pretty good. But if I start introducing gluten or even a lot of vegetables, it's gonna wreck my gut. So I must be a hunter. Yeah.
I feel good on both though, but it's probably a percentage.
Wait, what about speaking of Liver King? Do, you have your desiccated liver product now, but I always think with the desiccated liver capsules, like I just don't feel like it's enough. I feel like I would have to take 50 capsules to get the adequate amount of, copper and retinol and the stuff I'm trying to get out of there. So I take the capsules, but I still go to the farmer's market and buy frozen beef liver. And I found this guy now. It's really cool. He slices it up kind of like you would get a fillet sliced at a restaurant. And so then I buy pounds of that sliced, then I defrost one at a time. And while it's halfway defrosted, I cube it up and then I just put it in a bowl in the fridge. And I basically just take like globs of bloody liver and just wash it down with my raw milk. And I'm pretty much on that every day. And I feel really, really good. But I cannot stomach the taste. Like if I don't hold my nose, it's not happening. Yeah, just the smell of the iron or whatever it is in there is just so nasty.
Yeah, well, you're inspiring me to get back into it because I was doing that for a couple years. I'd take a few months off here and there, and I just got busy or lazy or something, and I've just been doing the capsules. But I'll usually take like 12 a day, so I do like 2 servings of the freeze dried liver caps. But I look at it as largely like a B vitamin complex source because you have all the B vitamins in there.
Oh, that's cool.
Which I've been just more cognizant of the water soluble vitamins. I think those are overlooked. Like people just forget that vitamin C and the B vitamins just go through you,
Right,
so you need to like take them consistently. But yeah, no, you inspired me. I've been told multiple times that I'm anemic, and liver is one of the staples that I feel incredibly credible on. And there's so many cofactors to iron, like retinol's in there, but so is folate, B12, even amino acids like L-lysine improve someone's iron status. Just probably in liver. I wouldn't doubt it in high amounts. But
Right. That's interesting. Yeah, there was another thing I think I asked Morley about, and he didn't seem to be excited about this, but there's a constituent in colostrum. It's in raw milk also, but it's
lactoferrin.
Yeah, lactoferrin. And I was like, dude, colostrum is full of that stuff. So it seems like if you were having problems with iron regulation and accumulation and such, that if you had a lot of that lactoferrin, you'd probably be able to kind of hack your assimilation and the regulation of iron.
I'm considering, I'm always an R&D, and so I won't say too much to give it away, but I'm considering creating a pretty innovative lactoferrin supplement, but there's different forms of it. So there's apo-lactoferrin, which you could use for more high iron, if you have high iron. And then like hollow lactoferrin is another form you could use if you have low iron, like myself. So it's interesting. Wow. There's like different types.
That's cool. I didn't know that.
There's even research on lactoferrin for like dental health. Like I've been getting into, I have the huge like tub of colostrum and I have a bunch of different brands, but I'll just like take scoops straight in my mouth and just coat my gums.
Yeah.
So good for your dental health. There's studies.
Yeah, I love it. I love colostrum. Yeah, I've been taking this survival colostrum. I buy those big, I think it's like 2 kilos. It's like $500 or something ridiculous. But I put just huge scoops of that in any cold drink kind of randomly because I learned from interviewing this woman that if you get it hot, you denature it and ruin it, which I was doing for years. I wasted a lot of money. But I found this product called Armra, A-R-M-R-A. I interviewed the doctor who put it out, and the doses are really small. It's like a teaspoon. And the data that they have on this stuff is just incredible. I have a feeling, they don't call it liposomal, but I have a feeling it's some kind of liposomal concentrate. So, the half a teaspoon daily serving of this Armra stuff is, probably the equivalent of 5 tablespoons of bulk colostrum or something. So it's some sort of concentrate, but man, anytime my gut gets off and I take that Armra, indisputably it's the thing fixing it. Like it's really powerful. Yeah. And it's just crazy because I always think if a serving size is small, it's not going to do anything. And I even asked her, I was like, I mean, is your serving size legit? Because I feel like I should take one of those giant protein powder scoops. She's like, no, you'd be wasting it. Literally, you only need a little bit because it's so restorative to the mucosal lining. You know, all of your mucosal linings, not just in your gut. You know, we have these linings in our mouth and everywhere inside our body that's basically protecting our insides from the outside world, right? We get leaky everything, not just leaky gut. You get permeable mucous membranes essentially. And so the way she explained that, I was like, oh, this is freaking awesome. So I'm a huge fan of colostrum. That might even, I don't know, it wouldn't make it in my top 10, but it would definitely be like the 12 or 13, you know, spot for the honorable mention. Cause it's one of those things like deserted island. I would probably take that with me. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah. I've been, you know, there's less is more, but there's also more is better. And I think both exist with supplements.
Yeah.
And Espoulardi, I've been like just handfuls like of capsules. And I was hearing that's heal. Like I was talking to a doctor up here a few months ago, and he's like, yeah, I've seen people's gut issues go away within a week or two, just taking a bottle of Saccharomyces boulardii, you know, because it's that competitive yeast that just wipes out candida and yeast overgrowth.
Right. Yeah, I've heard of that. I don't think I've ever used that though.
Yeah, it's fun. I just have bottles in my fridge and just go and I'll take a handful throughout the day.
What about that? I remember Dave Asprey talking about there was like he was eating like I was like mealworms or maggots or something. Do you remember that? Like it was some, I mean, it sounded actually cool. I forget what it was, but it was some hardcore probiotic where I don't know, he was eating like leeches or some shit. Do you remember what that was?
I thought it was like the larvae of or it was like it was going to hatch.
Tapeworm larvae.
That's what it was.
Yeah, that was really interesting. I mean, it was so compelling. I think I even looked it up and was like, I'm going to try this, you know? And then I don't know. I thought, well, maybe colostrum's a little easier to stomach. But yeah, there's so many cool novel things. I mean, there's like the fecal implants that, you know, you can get if you can find a donor that like gets rid of Crohn's disease in a month. Right. I mean, there's like, there's so many things that sound crazy, but actually work, you know?
Yeah. Last year I actually had leeches delivered to my house and I released them into my creek. I'm glad I didn't start because I was so close to doing the herudotherapy because I was convinced I had iron overload. And I was like, this is a lot more comfortable and easy than like going and having a giant needle stuck in my arm. And I'm just going to keep, like people do this, they keep leeches in a jar and then just put them on their skin to do self-phlebotomy at home, you know? Yeah. But the gross thing is they're actually injecting, it's like over 100 compounds or something at the same time as they're sucking your blood. So you're getting like them putting compounds in your body, which is kind of weird to think about, which are supposedly beneficial.
Why'd you put them in your creek?
I just didn't want to like be, you know, even though they're leeches, I just didn't want to like, I wanted them to have a good life if they could, and just be free. I wanted to like free them. I just didn't want them to die in a jar. Or something.
Okay. Oh, you bought them to apply them and then change your mind?
I had them shipped to my door. Yeah.
Okay.
It was like buyleeches.com, I think.
Oh, wow. Wow. What if like one day you're wading through your creek and they've proliferated and multiplied and you get, you know, leeches all over your ankles?
Well, fortunately I don't live over there anymore. So someone else's they probably died, but it's just I'd give them a burial at sea versus in a jar. So,
yeah. That's funny. Do you ever fish in your lake there?
You know, I need to get into it. It's just been so chaotic, as I'm sure you can relate, getting settled in. And it seems just like endless getting settled in, but I know at some point it'll end. Yeah. So the big focus, like I've spent the last like 4 to 5 months on the foundation of the growing spaces, 33-foot geodesic dome that I'm putting up. Right. And it's just the trenching, the water line, the power, getting everything. There's so much to get dialed in.
Yeah. Oh
that
my
it just takes up
God.
so much time that
I can't imagine, dude. I just
yeah.
built a fence. Well, I paid someone to build a fence around our house. And it was like, I mean, not only did it just take a long time and there was a lot of decisions being made, I mean, it's so freaking expensive.
Mhm.
I mean, it's just like, dude, they were not kidding. Owning just a house in a neighborhood is so expensive. The stuff you're doing is on another level. With your geodesic domes, you know, it'd be super sick, and maybe you've already thought about this, is see if the Annalemma guys would make you like a more robust, water structuring unit. Because
Yep.
out of all I mean, there's some other legit water structuring, but that one to me is probably my favorite because I can see the results it's had on my house plants. I only water my house plants with water that I structure with that, and it's just kind of poorly filtered water out of one of my shower heads with the filter on it. And my plants are like out of control, growing so awesome with that water. And I thought,
Wow.
man, if you were growing edible plants and you structured all the water with Annalemma, you'd probably be killing it. It'd be really fun to see what, to A/B test, like, oh, these tomatoes versus those tomatoes, and see what it does,
Yeah, I'm glad I heard about that from you, the Annalemma wand, and my friend Adam of Lifeblood got me into it too. And I think when I interviewed them, they said that they're working on a whole house unit, because right now I just have the Dan Winter fractal imploder on the whole house, that giant vortexer.
Yeah.
But I'd love to stack that with something else. And yeah, you've been sending me stuff on electroculture too, which I'm a little skeptical, but it makes sense. I mean, I have when I built my lodestone bathtub, I have tons of tiny pieces of rocks that I bought from eBay because I was just scrambling to try to get enough last minute. So what I'm going to do is just bury into the raised beds like hundreds of lodestone chunks and shungite. I just bought a ton of raw shungite chunks from eBay from Russia, and both of those have pretty awesome, electric magnetic properties. So
yeah, that stuff is so fast. I think I send you that stuff because I'm like, I wish I was doing it, but I'm not. So I'm like, somebody's got to do this. This could actually work. Hey, what's the deal with the and I'll let you go. I was like, I got all the time in the world, but I do actually have to leave in about a half an hour. But I always have such fun talking to you. And this will we won't have to just socially talk for a while because we got it all out now. Hopefully the people listening are deriving some value or at least entertainment from this. But with the lodestone bath, so you're creating like a unidirectional magnetic field. Is that what's happening?
Yeah, so it's all they're all pointed to magnetic north. And so it's not fighting the direction of the Earth's magnetic field. And it's grounded, and then in the grout I had the contractors mix in shungite, magnetite, and pyrite powder. So all these magnetic substances. So
it's all so rad.
It's all cohesive, and it's a little spiky, and it was kind of painful the first several months because when they installed the grounding copper wire, it was so crude that they shaved it somehow. And so I had basically copper wire shavings, microscopic, throughout the tub. So I'd like be taking a shower, and then I feel this sharp pain in my heel, and I have to pick out this copper wire out of my foot. And
oh my God.
Happened so many times. Yeah.
I bet your contractors were like, what the hell is this guy doing? I remember when we were doing the grounding pane and the mesh under the floor, my like regular, contract workers were just like, you could see them just rolling their eyes of my white boy insanity, stuff that I'm up to. I'm trying to explain it to them in Spanish and shit. And they're just like, you're insane. And I'm like, no, actually, I'm the sane one. Anyone who's sleeping in a high EMF field is actually the weirdo. I'm actually the sane one. That's how I always feel. Right. Now, making a shungite bath and filling it with goat milk, I don't know. But after I saw you do that, I put a big Japanese soaking tub in our bathroom. It's like 425 pounds. And I did that because I wanted to be able to extend my legs. It's huge, but it has about a 5-inch gap underneath it where there's just hollow space for the plumbing to go under there. And after I installed it, which I had to hire a piano mover to do, by the way, because no one else could or would. After I installed it, I saw you did that, and I was like, dude, I could have filled up that negative space under there with the stones, the magnetic stones. Like, damn it, because now that it's done, you'll never be able to lift it up. Like you would need a car jack or 5 people or something. So yeah, but that was a very cool idea.
That's awesome. It's probably still
Yeah.
worth doing. Lift it up there.
If I could lift it up and figure out what direction to point them, yeah, because the bath is really nice. I mean, it's so healing. I'll put baking soda and essential oils and
Nice.
every kind of like, magnesium and Epsom salt flakes and all that. It's like it's a really great healing bath. It's nice.
Yeah, my friends are making a high CO2 bath bomb right now. Because right now all I'm doing, because my goat's producing so much milk that I'm just doing goat milk and Shilajit baths. But once my dough dries up, I'm going to start doing, whatever, CBD baths or magnesium baths again. But I guess you can get up to pretty high ppm. I think it's like 25 parts per million of carbon dioxide. And I think it's safe because I know if you inhale too much, you could die. But I think if you have that infused in the bath, it's safe. And they're working with like, what is that? Mark Sloan that wrote a book on, he's like a repeat guy, but he's into like bath therapy and carbon dioxide. And it's funny, years ago, I read on the repeat forum, I guess someone made like a CO2 bodysuit where, like kind of like people do like ozone saunas, but like they pumped in carbon dioxide in there.
Wow.
And just almost like a dry suit for scuba diving where it's, so yeah,
Wow.
I was starting to get into it, and I bought a CO2 meter and I have a CO2 tank, and I was going to like try to microdose it while I slept, but it's lethal. So you have to really know what you're doing with carbon dioxide.
And you might have global warming alarmists show up at your door.
Right.
Shut you down. Your carbon emissions.
Yeah, but yeah, all the fun little experiments. I mean, it's fun doing what we're doing because it's like, stuff that sticks, we keep doing it. And then if something doesn't work out, we just do it for a while, then stop and share our experience with others.
Yeah, it's fun. I think the thing we have in common is just we're the guys who actually just are passionate about the experimentation, and the benefit for other people is that hopefully we can save them time, energy, and money by sharing the things that actually had an impact and kind of discarding the things that either had a negligible positive effect or had some sort of side effects, or in the case of the CO2 tanks is potentially dangerous. So you can kind of like take one for the team. This is the way I look at it, at least. And like, I'll try some crazy shit and I'm willing to like risk some degree of safety and health just because I'm weird like that. But also then I can tell other people like, I did this thing, don't do that, which is pretty frequently, I would say, I share things like, all right, guys, I pushed it a little too far and I do not recommend doing, X, Y, and Z, which is it's a nice service to be able to provide.
Did you ever have an MMS story, like the chlorine dioxin? You ever say?
I've had the bottle of the solution and then the mix. You have 2 bottles. I've had those same bottles for years. And I think there's something to it, the Jim Humble thing, and it's probably good for like spike proteins or, graphene oxide nanobots and shit. I've just never figured out the actual protocol. So the only time I've used it is kind of off label, and I've only taken it when I felt like I was about to get a flu or the cold or something like that. And just taken a little bit of it, throughout the first couple of days. And I don't know that I've ever like reversed or stopped a cold or flu with it, but I would say it's pretty likely that I've shortened the, the symptoms and the duration using it. But it's one I've just never. There's a lot of different people with different takes on it and how you use it. It's really tough to kind of get definitive information. Like, okay, here's the thing. It's kind of like people that are using borax for the, the nanotechnology. It's like everyone's kind of doing it a different way. And when you get into stuff like that, I mean, not necessarily borax, but with the MMS, I mean, it could be dangerous. I mean, it's very caustic when you swallow it. It's kind of like, is this going to eat my stomach lining up? And
it's kind of like turpentine.
Yeah, similar kind of thing. So yeah, it's like I have it in the house as kind of an emergency first aid thing, but I've not fully adopted it into like a protocol just because it's so sort of sketchy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Someone actually asked, what biohack was he super into that he's not into anymore?
Oh God, there's been so many things, dude, that I've gotten into and then just gotten bored with or found it didn't work or something. I mean, an old school one from this is like probably 20 years ago or so was the auto urine therapy. Uh, there's there's a book that's called, I think it's called Your Own Perfect Medicine or Nature's Perfect Medicine, and it's all about like how to do auto urine therapy. It means you drink your own pee. And it was a very compelling book, and it was convincing, and it made perfect sense to me. It's kind of like it's like homeopathic sort of immune system modulator, I guess you could say. And it might be true. I mean, people have had benefits with it, but I was doing that for a little while, and it's not as gross as it sounds actually. And your pee is sterile, so people think it's like eating your own, feces or something. It's really not that big a deal, but it's just mentally gross, and I didn't see any real benefits. And so I stopped. I probably did it for a few months. And then the other one similarly was the Procaine, or it's called GH. What's that? It's not
GH3, Juravital.
Yeah. Juravital GH3. I was injecting those ampules, and actually that feels pretty good. It's kind of like a GABA high is kind of what it feels like. But it was just so uncomfortable doing the sub-Q shots. I have no problem with. Like, I inject peptides all the time, and it's like just like drinking a glass of water, nothing. But when you got to go intramuscular, it's rough. The big old needle in your glute is just hard. But I went through a few cycles of that, and I actually liked the benefits, but the administration was just so hard, I gave up on it.
Yeah, same experience there.
Yeah, but it does give you kind of a nice, relaxed, kind of warm, fuzzy glow, and it does diminish anxiety a lot, is what I found. But yeah, it's too hard to keep up with it.
Yeah, I think I'm going to stick with the IVs. Like, I've only had 2 in the last month, and I did the Myers cocktail, 10 grams of vitamin C. And then this last time I did 25 grams because I wanted to do the high dose. I actually felt better from the Myers than I did than the 25 grams. But what's interesting is Doris Lowe differentiates with the forms in the IV. So she said she prefers sodium ascorbate instead of ascorbic acid. And I had injected ascorbic acid, which she said the pH matters, whereas sodium ascorbate, is more alkaline, which is closer to our blood. And I don't know if my nurse, she probably buffered the ascorbic acid with, to be a neutral. I don't know. But I'm interested in doing NAD next. And I want to try like the methylene blue with a red light. There's so many cool ones you can do.
Dude, the methylene blue IVs with red light, that's very cool. Yeah. I mean, there's people do it different ways, but the 2 ways I've done it, one is with the hemolumin device, which is like these glass tubes in a box essentially that shine UVA, UVC, and a 660 nanometer red light on your blood. And so you get an IV of methylene blue, so it's all in your bloodstream. Then you run your blood through those lights, which activates the methylene blue. And that, I remember I did one, and my wife did it too, and she's not into biohacking at all, but she was, for whatever reason, felt called to join me that day. And like halfway, and I'm doing all this stuff, so she's always a better guinea pig because she's just a regular person. She's not psycho like I am. And I look over to her, and she's like, oh my God, I feel amazing. Like, you could just see her brain go just full fucking mitochondrial explosion. It was really fun to watch. So I definitely liked that. And then the other way I did the methylene blue IV was at John Liurance's clinic in Florida. We did the IV, and then they shine the 660 red light on the IV bag with these little red light they clip onto the bag. So you're getting that. And then he puts in one arm a 660 intravenous laser that's just firing right onto your blood as it passes through. And then in the other arm, you have the methylene blue IV. And that was the same kind of effect, just like, whoa, super energizing, very super, super cool. And I think, safe for all intents and purposes, depending on the dosage. And, obviously you need like pharmaceutical grade, really clean methylene blue. not some shit from a sweatshop in China full of heavy metals and yeast or whatever.
Graphene oxide. No.
Yeah. Big Pharma is going to infiltrate the methylene blue supply worldwide. Yeah, there's for those of us that are into getting freaky, there's so many cool things emerging all the time. It's exciting. I mean, I think we're probably on the precipice of like some real changes where we're able to be legitimately like reverse chronic conditions quickly and obviously prevent a lot of them too.
I need to figure out both arms at once, because now I just tell them go for my left arm, because they can do it right, with my regular vein. They don't have to go by the wrist, the one by my elbow. I forget the name of it. But whenever they do my right arm, every time they say it collapsed, and so they have to go to the outside. I always have to get stuck twice. And now I just tell them I need to figure out why that happens. Maybe I need more bioflavonoids or something. Maybe it's an iron issue. Need more iron, but
interesting.
Yeah. But have you felt good from the NAD IV? Because I've heard
that's what I was gonna say, and then we better wrap it up because I gotta scram pretty soon. I'm glad you said that, because when you were talking about getting the IV of NAD, I was gonna share some experience with you. I find I tolerate the IV pretty well. A lot of people really struggle with the discomfort because it kind of makes your stomach feel crampy. It's an uncomfortable feeling. Depends how fast they open the IV, so they can slow it down or they can pause it if you freak out. But it's so expensive to get it's like $1,500, and maybe you're doing, I don't know, 500 milligrams, 750 or something like that, right? And it's like some people are charging $1,500 for this IV. The thing about that is your NAD levels in your plasma are going to reach a peak, and it's going to diminish fairly quickly, within a couple hours of getting off the IV. So what I like for NAD is the Mitozen suppositories, which for many people might freak them out, but it's probably more comfortable to put in a little bullet in your butt than it is to get a needle in your arm for a lot of people. But those are really cool because I think they're like 500 milligrams of NAD, but then they also have the 2 precursors as well. And then you're getting a blood plasma saturation for like 5 to 7 hours, and you have zero discomfort. And that form of NAD to me is by far like the most noticeable in terms of energy. And that incidentally is my absolute number one flight and jet lag hack. Like if I bring them to the airport in a cold pack, like, and before I get on the, because you want to make sure that you've evacuated completely, otherwise you waste a lot of money because you put one in and then you're like, oh, I got a sequel to my morning dump, basically, not to get too graphic, but it sucks if you put in an expensive suppository and then it just comes right out. So I'll usually wait until I get to the airport and then make sure I'm fully ready to receive. And then before I get on the plane, I'll go into the airport bathroom and put it in. And dude, it's like I cannot overstate how much more resilient I am to the process, the stress of flying. Because you're energized as all hell. Especially because you're not just forcing the NAD in, but you've got the 2 precursors, the NM and the whatever. I forget. You probably know what they are because you have a product with the nicotinamide or whatever it's called.
They often use like trimethylglycine, I think, or different things. And yeah, that's fascinating. And you were telling me Magnesium IV you recommend. I have to try that.
Yeah. Again, that one was with John Lieurance. And I think I texted him when we were texting, and whatever I sent you, it was like 500 milligrams, or it was like a shitload of magnesium chloride. Yes, I'm recording, but we're just about done. Thank you, honey. She's good at time, much better than me. Yeah, I had no idea until I asked him it was that much. But what he does is before he gives you the methylene blue or any other IVs, he opens up your vascular system with that high dose magnesium IV. And it's super, super relaxing. You get super warm and fuzzy. I mean, could be even at that dose a little uncomfortable for some people, but I just breathed through it and I felt pretty good. But then when he hits you with the other IVs, because your circulatory system is just blown open, just gets everywhere. And so it's a great potentiator for whatever's coming next. So you do the magnesium IV first, then a push behind that of whatever nutrients you want to actually get into your system. And if you wanted to be super psycho, You do those IVs, especially methylene blue, and then get in a hyperbaric chamber, especially the medical grade hard chamber with the high pressure that you have. Like that combo is life changing.
I'm gonna try that stack. That's awesome. Yeah, it seems like the magnesium chloride would burn, but I guess if it's a certain dose, it's
no. I mean, they could put some kind of buffer in there or something, you know, because that would be my thought too. I mean, if you like get that in a cut, it would sting, right? So, yeah, but no, it's totally fine. You just feel like super, almost like you just had a little alcohol, kind of just like that GABA. What's the GABAergic? I forget the
GABAergic.
Yeah, GABAergic, like that GABAergic kind of feeling, really relaxed, kind of high feeling. It's actually really quite nice. That's awesome. Super relaxing. Yeah. And also I think it just makes your body receptive to the other therapies that are coming after it. You know, it's just kind of like puts you in this parasympathetic state, and then you can actually handle whatever other shit you're doing in a clinic like that, you know, of getting a laser in your arm, whatever. You're just your nervous system is subdued and you're very receptive to the other therapies. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, Luke, I know we got to wrap this up. So you've been such an inspiration to me. And on the same note as IVs, you inspired me to finally try it after seeing your post of getting, you know, IV treatments for years. And I saw it at conferences and stuff. And I just kind of laughed it off and said, that's extreme. Just take a supplement. But I'm a believer. I think it's a tool like, you know, any other biohacking tool that in the right context for the right person, the right time, it can be super helpful. My first one, I was underslept. My friend David was visiting and we just didn't get a good night's sleep for whatever reason, or went to bed at 1 a.m. And then we got IV, and like halfway through, we're like, wow, we're fully awake. You know?
Yeah. I think that's one of the best ways to test different biohacks like that is like do it when you're really fatigued. Like if you're sleep deprived, you got off a long flight, like with the biocharger. If I use the biocharger every day, I don't really notice. And I'll be like, is this thing really doing anything? Then I get a shitty night's sleep, or I fly and I go sit in front of that and I'm like, oh my God, I feel amazing afterward. It's because you have the contrast, right? There's like, you know, you're really low energy to high energy. If you're kind of at your baseline and feeling pretty good, some of these things aren't as noticeable. So I think that's actually a great way to test things, is like wait until you're super tweaked and fatigued and see if it actually has a discernible effect at that point.
Yeah, I love it. Well, if you guys want to check out Luke's stuff, it's lukestorey.com, right? And you can see his podcast. His store is really fun and dangerous to look around.
Yeah, it gets expensive in there. So I always tell people like, yeah, lukestorey.com/store. Or if you want to, you know, have some financial prosperity in your life in your older years, don't go to the store and just, you know, get safe sun, good sleep, get cold, get hot, don't eat poisons, do some breathing, prayer, human connection. All the best stuff is free. But for those of us that want to go next level, yeah, I got an online store very similar to yours. And, you know, the podcast, which we got to get you on the podcast. You're always too busy homesteading. But the Lifestylist podcast is the name of the show. And I've been doing that for about 6.5 years. And it's just like the best ever. It's so fun.
Yeah. And I think we had a question like, what's the purpose of all this biohacking? And I think it's often neglected that we want more time with our parents, right? Like, and I know with my family, I just have an older brother and a mom and dad, and like, I help them as much as possible. And like, I give them the Blue Shield Cube and the Somavedic and like the supplements, and like, what a blessing to have more time with your family here on earth. And that's like one of my big reasons for biohacking and learning about this stuff. And if something happens to them, God forbid, I can help, you know, bring them back quickly.
Totally. Yeah. For me, it's always been quality of life, not quantity of life. You know, it's like, I mean, of course I want to live as long as I can, but I'm not like, I don't care how long I live. I just really want to have vitality for as long as I can while I'm here. I don't want to be the hunchback, like little old man with the cane that needs help across the street. Like I want to live life fully until it's time to check out, and then I'll go. But like want to like minimize the amount of suffering, for myself. And like you said, anyone around me that cares to listen to my, you know, protocols and things that I'm finding that work, that's just icing on the cake. If I can help myself and help other people along the way, I mean, what more do you want from life, you know? It's the best.
I love it. Yeah, my friend Leo Wick, he just posted this cryogenic chamber, speaking of living forever, out of Arizona. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's like Alcor. That's what it's called. And I guess it's like you could connect it with your life insurance. So if you die, they freeze either your whole body or they cut your head off and preserve supposedly the most important part of your body.
My God.
And then supposedly like Demolition Man, with like Stallone and Wesley Snipes, they could bring you back in the future. And they even have like a little box you could like keep, like a little lock box. I'm like, what if I did that with Mitolife supplements? I come back in like the year 3200.
Oh my God.
Like, popping Mitolife supplements and feeling but that seems a little extreme, and definitely like I don't know if it's you're kind of gambling.
Well, yeah, the thing with that, I've not heard of that, but the thing with that, my question would be, how do you, if your consciousness leaves your physical body, who is going to facilitate putting your consciousness back in that body, right? Because it's like, you're not, in my perspective, you're not your body. Your body's more of like this sort of protoplasmic supercomputer meat suit that your soul uses as a vehicle, right? And then when you die, your body's just, that vehicle's left there, and then you go somewhere. And anyone that's had an out-of-body experience or some really profound psychedelic experience will know this subjectively. But like, if your spirit or soul leaves your body, how does your spirit or body come find that one? And why would you want to, if you were going to incarnate back into a body, why would you want your old crappy body? You would want a new identity as a little baby. You could start the clock over, and be 0 days old.
Probably be Mark Zuckerberg or be in control.
Yeah, exactly. Man, to each their own. Hey, I got one last question for you. When you end your podcast, why do you say stick around while I close out the show? I always wondered what you're doing, because I've never heard anyone do that, and I don't do that.
Just so that I could chat with the guest after for a few minutes.
Oh, okay, I see. Okay.
Just so it's not like boom, done, kind of shock. But I actually got that from Justin of Extreme Health Radio. I copied his style there. But
I always, when I listen to your show, I always listen to N, and I always wonder what is he doing? But that makes sense. Yeah, because like when I'm recording on Zoom, which most of mine are live in person, but when it's on Zoom, I just like say, well, thanks for coming on. It's been great. And then I stop recording, and then I stay on and I just start talking, but I never tell them to stick around. Yeah. I don't click end conversation or end whatever on Zoom. I just stop the recording, but we're still there, so that's why I didn't guess that's what you're doing.
I used to not do it. And then a quarter of the time I'd end it, and then they would just end it. Right. And
they leave. Just bounce.
right.
That's funny, dude. That's funny.
But yeah, well, highly recommend you guys check out Luke's stuff. His podcast's great. Information's great. He has like an EMF class, and just thanks for all that you contribute, Luke, to the health community. I really appreciate it. And like I said, you've been an inspiration to me. So
awesome. Likewise, dude. I'm glad we got to do this. I'm glad we got to go hard. If anyone's hanging in there, man, you're a diehard if you're still with us at this point. At this hour, we've really gone full on today. So it's great, man. I appreciate it.
I love it. Well, stick around as we close out the show.
Thanks, Matt.
Well, that wraps up today's show. That was a lot of fun. I really love talking to Luke. And as I mentioned, his website is lukestorey.com, and he recently launched blue light blocking glasses, and that company is called Gilded. And when you go to Luke Storey, you'll see the link there up on his website. And his podcast, The Lifestylist, is awesome. So go through and listen to shows that you're drawn to. And if you want to support me in the show, you can go to matt-blackburn.com. And I finally put up the revised CLF protocol. So that's like a living document as I find new research about calcification, lipofuscin, and fibrosis. I will add it to that post and make it more and more comprehensive and nuanced as time goes on. And Mitolife is my supplement company. You can find that at www.mitolife.co. And I just announced today that we're making the vitamin E capsules smaller. So that is the PUFA Protect product. I listen to customer feedback a lot, and one of the things that I would hear often is that the capsule's really big and hard to get down, and it also is a pretty hefty dose of vitamin E and MCT oil, which can be too much for people. So with smaller capsules, you'll have more control over the dosage. So you can just take 1 or 2 of the small capsules if you don't want to ingest a lot of MCT or vitamin E all at once. So that will be live by next week, along with a new vitamin C product. This is ascorbic acid with berry polyphenols. So I'm really excited about that. Whether somebody has iron deficiency, stage 1, stage 2, or iron deficiency anemia, which is called stage 3 iron deficiency, or whether you're just a human being on a microwave planet, that no matter where you are, you're getting bombarded with electromagnetic radiation, that depletes ascorbate in your body, and specifically in your skin, which is your first line of defense. So ascorbic acid, supplementing ascorbic acid, can really help to act as a buffer to EMF damage. And I've been experimenting with that and really feeling incredible on it. And it synergizes with vitamin E. So vitamin C regenerates vitamin E, and they work together to protect against lipid peroxidation, oxidative stress, so many other things. So keep an eye out on the Mitolife website next week. There's going to be some exciting things happening there. And hopefully you were inspired by this show to not look at your phone first thing in the morning or before you go to bed, because that is a huge stressor that people neglect. We often talk about EMFs and heavy metals and mold toxicity and everything except staring at a screen and just mindlessly scrolling. And I love what Luke said of refreshing the mind, spirit, and emotions instead of just refreshing your inbox and refreshing your feed on social media. I'm really starting to think that this is one of the prime toxins that is affecting people's health, and not a lot of people are talking about it or highlighting it. So if you want to learn more about my work, keep up with my latest research, you can head over to Mitolife Academy on YouTube. It's $15 a month. I do giveaways there, monthly live Q&A, and I upload 2 videos a month of different protocols and just health concepts that I'm into lately. So I'll see you guys next Friday. Stay supercharged.